The words cut through the smoke and sirens like a blade. You're coming with me. A beam of flashlight sliced the darkness of the stairwell, catching the silhouette of a woman in a charcoal suit, heels skidding on wet concrete. Her hair damp from sprinkler mist, one hand braced against the steel railing, the other clamped to her ribs. Rain hammered against the Lexington Tower's windows, each drop illuminated by the orange glow of flames creeping up the eastern face of the building. Inside, emergency lights flickered in crimson pulses, casting long shadows that danced like demons across smoke-filled corridors. Ethan Reed stood firm, the blue fabric of his maintenance uniform dark with sweat, his face illuminated by the beam of his tactical flashlight. Ms. Winters, the main exit is compromised. I need you to follow me now. Claire Winters straightened her spine, the CEO of Winters Innovations refusing to bend even as smoke curled around her ankles. I don't follow, I lead. A cough ripped through her sentence, betraying the composure she fought to maintain. Not tonight, Ethan replied, his voice steady as the building trembled beneath them. He reached forward, catching her forearm with a grip that said both I've got you and don't argue. Fire spreading faster than it should. System failures on 3 floors. This isn't normal. Claire's eyes narrowed through the haze. The sprinklers. Activated too late, alarms delayed by almost 3 minutes. Ethan guided her down 3 steps, his movements precise, economical. Someone wanted this fire to have a head start. A ceiling panel crashed down behind them, sending sparks cascading like deadly fireflies. The stairwell door they'd just passed through buckled with a groan as heat warped the metal. How do you know this building so well? Claire demanded, her breath coming in short gasps as they descended. Ethan's eyes never stopped scanning their surroundings. I know every emergency exit, every maintenance corridor, every weak point. It's my job to know what breaks first when things go wrong. Another explosion rocked the building and Claire stumbled. Ethan's arm shot out, steadying her with reflexes that spoke of training beyond maintaining office buildings. Left, she commanded, gesturing toward a landing. Server rooms that way. Critical data. Right, Ethan corrected, guiding her with gentle pressure. Server room will be a furnace by now. Right takes us to the auxiliary exit with the bad hinge and better odds. Claire gave him a sidelong look. You catalog hinges? I catalog everything that could get someone killed. They turned into a narrowing corridor, the smell of wet drywall and hot metal thickening the air. A young analyst appeared from nowhere, eyes wild with panic. I can't find the... He started, disoriented. Ethan pressed his flashlight into the young man's hand and turned it toward the glowing green exit sign. Go. Don't run. Breathe through your collar. Keep your head down. When the analyst vanished into the smoke, Claire whispered, Thank you. Then looking down at her sleeve, I'm bleeding. Glass, Ethan observed, noticing the thin ribbon of red seeping through expensive fabric. Superficial. Keep moving. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He eased Claire to a halt near a junction box, checked the screen. A child's name glowed. Sophie. He answered on speaker, keeping his voice calm. Hey, Bean. A little girl's voice, sweet and sleepy, filtered through the case. Daddy, you promised story time. I know, he replied, his tone shifting to something gentler than Claire had heard from him yet. The building's having a bad night. Is the building scarier than the Dragon Book? About the same, he said with the hint of a smile. Who's that? Sophie asked, clearly detecting another presence. Claire straightened, surprised at herself when she answered, Claire. Claire, Sophie repeated, testing the name. Are you nice? The question caught Claire off guard. She ran companies, not bedtime interrogations. I'm working on it. Ethan's mouth twitched, suppressing a smile. We're being very nice to emergency exits right now. That's good, Sophie decided. Daddy, don't forget your inhaler in your left pocket. You always forget. Copy that, he said gently. I'll be home soon. You better, Sophie responded. And Claire, be safe. Daddy always tries to save everyone. The call ended, and for a beat, the sprinkler's rain felt warmer. Claire studied Ethan with new interest. You have a daughter. Sure do. He checked the corridor ahead. And right now, we need to move. They pushed through a door that groaned on its hinges, emerging onto a catwalk above a loading bay. Below, smoke rolled in slow, ominous waves. A metal dumpster smoldered like a sullen campfire. The alarm wail, then chopped off mid-cry as backup generators kicked on with a deep, mechanical hum. Claire pointed. Stairwell B will be jammed. C's under renovation. D is rusty but honest, Ethan completed, guiding her forward. Like you. She shot back, oxygen and adrenaline making her reckless. Honest, anyway. He took the lead, testing each step, weight low, shoulders squared. At the base of the catwalk, steam rose from a cracked pipe. He brushed his palm near it, hissed at the heat, then angled his body to shield her as they passed. At the next door, he tugged. It stuck. He set his boot against the frame, leaned in, and the metal shrieked before giving way. They spilled into an alley that smelled of rain, hot wires, and the city's heartbeat. The storm owned the night, rain strafing sideways across pavements slick with reflected light. Police lights pulsed at the far end of the block, blue and red smearing across puddles. Firefighters moved with orchestrated precision. Someone shouted Claire's name. She turned. Camera flashes sparked through the curtain of rain. Paparazzi wielding telephoto lenses like weapons. Ethan put a hand at the small of her back. Head down, walk. You don't have to touch me, she said reflexively, a response honed in boardrooms where physical contact often came with manipulation. Right now, I do. He steered her beneath a metal awning, giving them momentary shelter. EMS is over there. You need oxygen. She opened her mouth with a corporate retort, then closed it. Fine, briefly. A paramedic checked her vitals under the tent. Pulse quick, oxygen low. Claire watched the numbers as if they were a volatile stock. A mask hovered near her face. She hesitated a fraction too long. Ethan took it, set it gently against her skin. Breathe, he instructed. In through the nose. Out like you mean it. A cough shook her, and the mask fogged, then cleared. The paramedic nodded. You'll live. I'm very busy, Claire said dryly into the mask. I plan to. She stood to leave, but the paramedic blinked in surprise. Wait, ma'am, you really should. She will, Shidao, Ethan interjected. After we find her a ride. Claire squared her shoulders. A ride to where? My place, he said, as if it were the only geography that made sense. You're not going home, and the hospital is a press conference with needles. You presume? Yeah, I'm presuming you value not getting trampled by strangers with lenses. He nodded toward the reporters, edging closer, cameras raised. Someone shouted, Claire, did you torch your own building for insurance? Another voice. Hey, Winters, who's the janitor boyfriend? Claire's eyes flashed anger, shame, something proud enough to refuse both. But the rain stole heat and courage with equal efficiency. Ethan didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. Look at me. She did. You can hold your ground here and give them a show, he said quietly. Or you can come with me and keep your power. That sounds like a line, she said, skepticism edging her tone. It is, he admitted, but it's true. Lightning split the sky into veins of electric blue. Thunder rolled off glass and steel. Ethan reached up, tucking a soaked strand of hair away from her eyes with a hand so careful it felt like a promise. Just for tonight, he added. You call the shots after. Something in her, a lifetime of command, a habit of control, met something in him. A lifetime of triage, a habit of protecting. Their edges found a fit. Fine, she said, just tonight. A sleek black SUV nosed up to the curb, unmarked, windows tinted, a door cracked to reveal a man's profile in the back seat. Ethan shifted, blocking Claire's view instinctively. That yours? He asked, tension visible in his shoulders. Victor, she said under her breath, the name like a warning flare. He's not your ride, Ethan decided. She almost smiled. Almost. You give orders like you own the place. I own a $4 door wedge and a pair of boots that know when to move. He tilted his head toward the far end of the alley. My truck's that way. Cameras surged as they stepped out from the awning. A flash caught the exact moment Claire stumbled and reached for the only steady thing in the storm, the man in the faded blue uniform. His arm went around her automatically. In the instant before thunder swallowed the street, a lens captured it. Power in exile, leaning into the hands of a man no one saw coming. They vanished into rain so heavy it might as well have been a curtain. The truck's wipers fought a losing battle against the Seattle rain, streaking the windshield into a blur of lights and shadows. Ethan drove with both hands on the wheel, jaw set, eyes scanning the wet streets. Beside him, Claire sat wrapped in his rain slicker, like it was a lifeline she hadn't meant to take. Her phone kept lighting up on the console, calls from numbers she knew too well. But she didn't touch it. They turned off the main road, the city's hum fading into the low groan of wind through narrow streets. "You always drive this quietly?" she asked, her voice steady, though her fingers tightened on the edge of the seat. "Noise makes people miss what matters," he said. She studied him. "And what matters right now? That you're still breathing, that you're not out there in that mess." She almost laughed. "You say that like you've made a habit of collecting strays." Ethan's eyes stayed on the road. "Only the ones worth saving." Before she could decide how to answer, they turned into a narrow driveway beside a squat brick building with peeling paint. A faded sign above the front stoop read Belmont Apartments, the kind of place you passed without noticing. Ethan parked and came around to her side, offering a hand she didn't take until her heel slipped on the wet pavement and she caught his forearm. His grip was steady, unshakable. He didn't smirk or comment, just guided her toward the side entrance. Inside, the building smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and rain-soaked coats. A warm voice called from somewhere ahead. "Ethan, that you?" A small woman stepped into view from an open door, silver hair braided down her back, eyes sharp despite her soft smile. She wore a quilted robe and thick wool socks. "Evening, Mrs. Torres," Ethan said. "Sorry to bother." "You never bother," she cut in. Her gaze shifted to Claire, taking in the damp hair, the suit, the exhaustion just under the surface. "And who's this? Don't tell me you finally brought home someone with better shoes than you." Claire blinked. She hadn't been read so quickly in years. "Claire Winters," she said, extending a hand. Mrs. Torres took it with both of hers. "You look cold, mija, and tired. I'll make tea." "That's not necessary," Claire started, but Mrs. Torres was already bustling away. "She'll be offended if you refuse," Ethan said. "And she's stubborn. Trust me." They stopped at a basement door with two locks, one deadbolt, one latch. He unlocked both, stepped aside for her to enter. The apartment was small but not cramped. A narrow living room opened into a kitchenette. Beyond that, a short hall led to two bedrooms. The place smelled faintly of cedar and clean laundry. A shelf by the door held a jumble of boots, sneakers, and a tiny pair of pink rain boots that had clearly seen better days. "This is home?" she asked, setting her bag on the couch. "Home enough," he said. "Sophie's room is down the hall. She's at her aunt's tonight." Her eyes drifted to a corkboard on the wall. Photos, most of a little girl with Ethan's eyes, mixed with scraps of paper covered in crayon drawings. One showed a stick figure man with what looked like a mop in one hand and a sword in the other. "That you?" she asked, pointing. "Depends," he said, pulling off his jacket. "If it's the mop, yes. The sword, that's artistic license." Mrs. Torres arrived a moment later, balancing two mugs and a plate of shortbread cookies. "Eat," she ordered, setting them on the coffee table. "Sugar helps after a shock." "I'm fine," Claire began, but Mrs. Torres's raised eyebrow cut her short. Ethan watched her take the first sip of tea, the steam curling against her face. For the first time since the fire, her shoulders dropped half an inch. "You said this wasn't a random fire," he said quietly. Her eyes met his over the rim of the mug. "It wasn't. I smelled accelerant before the sprinklers kicked in. And the alarms. They shouldn't have failed, not in my building." "Your building," he repeated, not as a question. She gave a bitter smile. "Not for long. Someone wants me out, Ethan, and they're willing to burn everything to do it." His gaze stayed steady on hers. "Any idea who?" "One name," she said. "Victor Lang." Ethan's expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted. Alert, like a hunter hearing movement in the brush. "We are. Control, money, and because he's never forgiven me for voting him down 2 years ago, I stopped him from pushing through a merger that would have gutted the company." Before he could respond, her phone buzzed again. She glanced at the screen. The name Victor lit in white letters. She didn't answer, but Ethan caught the flicker in her eyes. Anger, yes, but also something else. Why not block him? He asked. Because knowing what he's saying is safer than wondering. She set the phone down untouched. Outside, rain ticked against the small basement windows. Mrs. Torres returned to her apartment with a parting look that burned through Ethan's practiced neutrality. Weather's getting worse, she observed. Both ways. Ethan checked the deadbolt, then turned back to Claire. You'll stay here tonight. Tomorrow, we'll figure out the rest. Claire straightened. You don't even know me. I could be a terrible house guest. I'll take my chances, he said. Besides, terrible house guests don't usually come with arsonists in pursuit. She surprised herself with a small laugh. Do you always diffuse tension with dry humor? Only when it works. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight. She leaned back into the couch, mug warm in her hands, and studied the man who had stepped into her disaster without hesitation. Why help me? She asked finally. His answer was simple, almost too simple. Because you needed it, and for reasons she couldn't name, that was enough for tonight. Ethan slid the second deadbolt home with a quiet click. The sound was small, but it settled something inside Claire she hadn't realized was rattling. 2 locks? She asked, easing out of her ruined heels. Her ankle flexed, pain flashed and vanished. Basement wisdom, he said. First lock keeps the weather out. Second keeps the world out. He crossed to the kitchenette, his movements economical. Kettle on burner lit, towel thrown over his shoulder like he'd been born with it there. Claire stood in the middle of the little living room, unsure where to put her hands. She was accustomed to rooms that belonged to her, the corner office with the skyline view, the glass conference table where people waited before they spoke. Here, she was a guest in a space the size of her walk-in closet. She didn't hate it. She hated that she didn't hate it. Sit, Ethan said. Let me clean that cut. I'm fine, she started, and then caught herself. That word had been her armor for a decade. Tonight it felt thin as paper. She sat. He opened a tin box labeled in block letters. First aid. Pulled out antiseptic and gauze. He knelt, gentle without being careful in a way that insulted. Tell me if the sting is too much. I grew up with 3 older brothers and a backyard full of blackberry brambles, she said, mouth quirking. I can survive antiseptic. You do more than survive, he said. That's your problem. She watched him work. The man had hands made for repair, knuckles nicked from 100 small battles with stubborn things. The room hummed, the kettle's low simmer, the heater's old lungs, the city breathing through concrete. On the corkboard above the little desk, Sophie's artwork tacked up like flags claimed after tiny victories. A purple dragon, a rocket ship, a smiling stick figure in a blue uniform with a crown. Claire's gaze snagged on a printed schedule. Custody hearing, Thursday, 10 a.m. She looked away before she could read the notes under it. You run a building by cataloging hinges, Rigi said, and realized it wasn't a jab, it was observation. I run a life by knowing where things fail, he replied, taping gauze in place. His eyes flicked up to meet hers, and fixing what I can. Fix me, she said lightly, like a dare. He didn't blink. I don't fix people. I stand next to them until they remember how to stand. She swallowed. It landed. It lodged. The kettle clicked off. He poured hot water into 2 mugs. The tea smelled like peppermint and something sweeter. Honey. He slid one toward her. You always keep your place this. She gestured at the room that somehow managed to be both spare and lived in. Orderly chaos takes more time, he said. She should have argued with that. Instead, she heard her father's voice, the one who taught her how to sort coins by year and shine, who said, you keep things tight, kid. The world keeps fewer surprises. He hadn't believed it enough to stick around. Her phone lit up on the coffee table. The name Victor Lang burned like a fuse. She let it go dark. It lit again. Ethan nodded toward it. You're going to either answer or throw it at the wall. Choose the one you won't regret. She exhaled through her nose. Answering it is the one I'll regret. Then put it on speaker, he said, and don't stand close to a window. She smirked despite herself. She hit accept. Victor. Claire. His voice was all velvet and voltage. Background noise suggested a car, the whisper of tires on wet streets. I hear you had a difficult evening. That's one word. I prefer avoidable. A pause just long enough to cut. You insisted on redundancy upgrades. They failed anyway. Because someone adjusted the timestamp, she said, calm as glass. That isn't failure, that's intent. Careful, he murmured. It's late. People say careless things when they're tired. Ethan moved without sound, wiped the counter, turned off the stove. He positioned himself where he could see both her and the door. He was building a map the way some men built fires. Quietly, necessarily. What do you want, Victor? Claire asked. What I've always wanted, Trump, he said, for Winter's innovations to stop carrying dead weight. And who's dead weight today? Another pause. His voice softened as if he'd leaned closer to the microphone. You, if you insist on making enemies of your friends. She laughed, not kindly. You are not my friend. Not at the moment, he conceded, but I could be useful. You're in a difficult position. Optics are unfortunate. The board could be merciful if you demonstrated a willingness to cooperate. Cooperate, she repeated. Resign gracefully, he translated, as if he were offering her a silk robe instead of a drop into the sea. For a narrative hardens around you that will be difficult to sand down. She closed her eyes. She could see him in her head. Expensive suit, silver watch, the office lit like a private chapel. For years, he had been the man who smiled when she was right and sharpened his knives when she was still right but inconvenient. Tell the narrative to watch its step, she said. It's entering a place with two locks. Ethan glanced at her, surprised, then allowed himself the smallest grin. Victor didn't laugh. There's another matter. Of course there is. The arson investigation, Bond, he said. You'll face questions, not just about insurance. His voice thinned until it was almost tender. About your habits, your temper, your relationships. The word hung between them like a drop of black rain. Claire stared at her own reflection in the dark TV screen. Relationships. She'd had 4 in the last 10 years. All ended with polite statements and an emptier calendar. Do what you have to do, she said. So will I. A silence. When Victor spoke next, something human slipped around the edges. A weariness she'd never heard from him. My son's tuition is due next week. It was so unexpected she didn't answer. Then carefully, I didn't know you had a son. People don't pay attention unless you make them, he said. And there it was, an ache buried under iron. He's good. He wants to be a pianist. Prep school. Scholarships don't cover everything. Claire pictured him in his office, the framed photo she'd barely noticed before. A boy at a piano in a too-big blazer, fingers curved over keys like they knew where to go. She felt the smallest pull of gravity. Empathy's quiet, annoying tug. You're better when you talk like that, she said softly. I'm better when I win, he replied, and the moment snapped. Sleep well, Claire. The line clicked dead. She stared at the phone as if it might confess. Then she placed it face down on the table like she was covering a mirror after a death. Ethan leaned a hip against the counter. He wanted you scared. He got bored before he got me, she said, but her hands trembled until the mug warmed them back to steady. Do you trust anyone on that board, Ethan? Eleanor, she said after a moment. Maybe, when it suits her. She likes control more than she likes me. People who like control can be convinced by evidence, he said. We'll get some. We? She looked up. He shrugged, a motion that somehow translated to obviously. You don't need a bodyguard, you need a witness. Preferably one who catalogs hinges. For the first time that night, her laugh shook loose from somewhere real. You realize I'm not an easy house guest. You say that like it's news. She took another sip of tea. The mint soothed the ash in her throat. Thank you for what? He asked. For not asking questions you wanted answers to. I only ask questions I earn, he said. I'll ask some later. A small sound patted down the hall, the soft hum of a machine, a nightlight buzzing faintly. The domestic choir of a house that had learned to sing quietly. Claire stood and walked to the doorway of the second bedroom. She didn't enter, just stood there. The room was painted the color of watercolor skies. A bookshelf held picture books, lined like soldiers pretending not to be silly. A plastic nebulizer sat on the dresser with a sticker that read, Brave Breaths. On the wall, a paper banner spelled Sophie in looped letters that wobbled but did not fall. She felt something she didn't have a word for. Something like reverence and grief shaking hands. Does she know how lucky she is? She asked, still looking at the banner. She knows I make terrible pancakes and good promises, he said. Claire turned back to him. I make great coffee and terrible exits. Then we're complimentary, he said. The heater knocked once. Rain pawed at the egress window like a polite animal. She pulled the blanket from the arm of the couch and sat, tucking it around her legs with the unapologetic efficiency of someone who'd slept in airports and boardrooms, and once, memorably, on the floor of a server closet. Ethan dimmed the lamp. If you wake up to noise, he said, it's just the pipes complaining. And if it isn't, she asked. Then I have two locks and a plan, he said. She let her head tip back against the cushion. She thought of Victor's son, a boy bending over keys, and of Sophie's banner that wobbled without falling. She thought of two locks holding their lines in a world built to pry, something unspooled in her chest, not surrender, but permission. Good night, Ethan. Good night, Claire. In the dark, the room felt smaller, but the smallness was a blessing. Fewer places for fear to hide. She closed her eyes and for the first time in a long time slept because someone else was watching the door. The knock came just after sunrise, sharp, deliberate, the kind that announced someone who expected to be heard. Ethan opened the door to find Detective Mira Chen standing there. Windbreaker zipped to her chin, hair pulled back in a no-nonsense knot. A notebook bulged from the pocket of her bag, and the expression on her face said she was already halfway into the conversation. Ethan. She stepped inside with her waiting. Her eyes caught on Claire, who had just emerged from the hallway in an oversized sweatshirt that wasn't hers. And you must be the CEO everyone's talking about. Claire's chin lifted. Talking about or talking against? Detective Chen's mouth ticked upward. Depends who's paying for the coffee. She looked back at Ethan. We need to talk. Both of you. Ethan shut the door, sliding the deadbolt. You don't usually come this far without a reason. I have two, Chen said, dropping her bag onto the table. First, the fire wasn't random. Second, your building's internal security logs are interesting. Claire's voice went cool. Define interesting. They've been tampered with, Chen said. She pulled out a stack of printed screenshots. Timestamps, access logs, anomalies highlighted in yellow. The fire alarm's data feed was delayed by 3 minutes, long enough to make sure the blaze had a head start before anyone could react. Claire leaned closer, scanning the pages, her jaw tightening. 3 minutes is the difference between a salvageable room and a total loss. Exactly, Chen said. And whoever did it knew the system, knew how to bypass the backup. This isn't amateur work. Ethan crossed his arms. And you came to me because you work nights, Chen said. You know who's where when the rest of the city's asleep. And because you're the only person in that building who doesn't owe anyone a favor. Claire looked at Chen sharply. You're saying this was internal. I'm saying the logs point to someone with high-level access, Chen said. And I'm guessing you already have a name in mind. Claire didn't answer right away. She turned one of the pages toward the light, eyes narrowing at a particular code. Victor. Chen didn't blink. That was my guess too. Ethan caught the shift in Claire's posture, tension laced with something else, something like guilt. Say it, he told her quietly. She looked between them, the words heavy. 2 years ago, a compliance officer came to the board with evidence of financial irregularities in Victor's division. I voted to terminate him instead of investigate. Ethan frowned. Why? Because it would have been messy, she said, voice flat. Because we had a merger on the table and I thought protecting the company meant keeping it clean in the press, even if that meant getting my hands dirty in private. She swallowed. He was right and I buried him. I told myself it was for the greater good, where Chen's gaze was level. And now you think this is payback. I don't think, Claire said, I know. The silence that followed was tight as wire. Ethan broke it first. So you've been on both sides of the wrong decision. She met his eyes without flinching. And I'm standing here telling you because I don't plan on being on that side again. It was the kind of statement that could sound like spin in a boardroom. But here, with the rain ticking against the basement window and no cameras rolling, it sounded like something closer to confession. Chen snapped her notebook shut. Then we need proof. The logs I have will raise eyebrows, but they won't close a case. We need the unedited backups, and those are only on the internal server, offline, locked, and backed up in the data vault on 27. Claire's eyes sharpened. That room's badge restricted. Only executives and senior IT have clearance. And janitors, Ethan said, deadpan. They both looked at him. He shrugged. I clean around the vault. I don't go in, but I know the guards, and I know when they're bored enough to wave me through without thinking. Chen tilted her head. And you know the building's blind spots. I catalog hinges, he said, and the faintest smile ghosted across Claire's mouth despite herself. But then her expression sobered. If we go after those logs, Victor will know. He'll see it as an escalation. Ethan leaned forward on the table. He already set a fire under you. Escalation's done. Chen slid a small recorder across the table toward Claire. If you talk to anyone on the board between now and then, record it. Doesn't matter if it's just small talk. People get careless when they think they're safe. Claire turned the device over in her hand. People get careless when they think you won't fight back, she murmured. Ethan caught her gaze. And you will. She held his stare for 3 beats. I will. The moment hung there, solid and unyielding. Chen packed her things. I'll be in touch with the time. In the meantime, watch your doors. When the door shut behind her, the apartment felt smaller, heavier. Claire walked to the window, watching rain thread down the glass like nervous fingers. You're not going to tell me to stay out of it? She asked without turning. No, Ethan said. I'm going to tell you to be ready for it. She glanced back. Why? Because you've got one shot to prove you're not the person you were when you buried that compliance officer, he said. And because I don't like cleaning up after cowards. Her mouth curved, not in amusement, but in recognition of the hit. You think I'm looking for redemption? I think you're looking for the truth, he said. Redemption's just a bonus. For the first time in days, she felt the faintest stir of something that wasn't fear. It was sharper, steadier. Outside, the rain kept falling, but the air between them had shifted. They weren't just surviving the storm anymore. They were preparing to walk into it. Morning light filtered through the basement windows of Ethan's apartment, painting pale rectangles across the worn floorboards. Claire stood before the small bathroom mirror, examining her reflection with clinical detachment. The woman who stared back wore an oversized Navy SEALs t-shirt, her usually impeccable hair tousled, a butterfly bandage on her temple where glass had caught her during the fire. The CEO of Winters Innovations looked utterly, refreshingly human. You can use these, Ethan said from the doorway, holding out a neatly folded stack of clothes. My sister's. She leaves things here for Sophie sometimes. Claire accepted them with a nod. Thank you. The world thinks you're recovering at the Four Seasons, he continued. Detective Chen arranged it. Press is camped out at the hotel entrance while you're here. Here, Claire repeated, a hint of wonder in her voice as she glanced around the modest bathroom with its practical shower curtain adorned with dinosaurs. I'll make coffee, Ethan said, turning to leave. Ethan, her voice stopped him. Tell me about Sophie. Something softened in his expression. She's 9, smart, too smart sometimes, loves science, hates peas, collects rocks that look like animals. Has her mother's eyes and my stubborn streak. He hesitated. And she has severe asthma. That's why. The nebulizer, Claire finished. Yeah, 3 hospitalizations this year alone. The unspoken weight of medical bills hung in the air between them. The custody hearing, Claire said. Her mother's family is fighting you for her? Ethan's jaw tightened. Her aunt, Maya, my wife, died 3 years ago. Car accident. Her sister thinks Sophie deserves better opportunities than what a maintenance man can provide. And what do you think Sophie deserves? Stability, he answered without hesitation. Someone who sees her, not just what she could be, someone who stays. The last word carried the faint echo of an old wound. Claire nodded, understanding more than she revealed. I'll be ready in 10 minutes. The Winters Innovations headquarters gleamed in the morning sun. 60 stories of glass and steel rising above downtown Seattle like a monument to human ingenuity. The lobby buzzed with activity, security guards checking IDs with heightened vigilance, executives huddled in whispered conversations. Maintenance crews assessing smoke damage on the lower floors. Claire strode through the main entrance wearing Ethan's sister's jeans and a borrowed blouse, her head high despite the murmurs that followed in her wake. Ethan walked a half step behind her, uncomfortable in the pressed security uniform Claire had insisted he wear. "People are staring," he muttered. "Let them," she replied. "Perception shapes reality. Right now, we need to look like nothing is wrong." The elevator doors closed around them, sealing them in momentary privacy. "The board meeting is at 10, Claire said, checking her watch. "They'll want blood." "They'll want a scapegoat," Ethan corrected. "Don't give them one. And if they ask why I've suddenly hired an ex-military janitor as my personal security," Ethan's lips quirked, "tell them I have excellent references." The elevator opened onto the executive floor. Claire's assistant, a young woman with keen eyes and a perpetually concerned expression, rushed forward, tablet in hand. "Ms. Winters, thank God you're all right. We have been so worried. Your schedule is absolute chaos. The insurance adjusters need signatures. The press is demanding a statement. And Mr. Reynolds has called 3 times this morning." "Mira," Claire said, her voice steady. "This is Ethan Reed. He's our new head of security." Mira blinked, taking in Ethan's stiff posture and watchful eyes. "I wasn't aware we were hiring for that position." "Recent events have made it necessary," Claire replied. "He'll need full clearance and access to all security protocols. Immediately." Mira's eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. "Of course. I'll notify Archer." She glanced at her tablet. "The board is gathering early. There are concerns about the company's direction." "I'm sure there are," Claire said. "Have the fire investigation reports sent to my office. And Mira, no calls, not even from Victor." "Especially not from Victor," Ethan added quietly. Mira's gaze flicked between them, calculating something behind her professional smile. "Understood." Duh. Ethan stood against the wall of the boardroom, arms crossed, watching the Winters Innovations leadership team filter in. They wore expensive suits and expressions of carefully modulated concern. Their eyes slid over him with dismissive curiosity before returning to Claire, who sat at the head of the long table reviewing documents as if this were any ordinary meeting. James Harrington, the CFO, entered last, silver-haired, patrician features set in a perpetual frown. "Claire," he said, his voice carrying the practiced warmth of a man who had mastered the art of sounding sincere. "We're relieved to see you well. Last night was unfortunate." "That's one word for it," Claire replied without looking up. "And this is," Harrington gestured toward Ethan, "Ethan Reed, our new head of security." Harrington's eyebrows rose. "Rather sudden, isn't it? I don't recall the board approving this position." "The board doesn't approve security personnel," Claire said, finally meeting his gaze. "I do." "Yes, well," Harrington took his seat. "Speaking of approvals, there are matters requiring immediate attention. Our shareholders are understandably concerned after last night's incident. The stock has already dropped 3 points in pre-market trading." Victor Lang strode in, immaculate in a charcoal suit despite the early hour. 4 points now, he corrected, setting a leather portfolio on the table. "And falling." Claire's expression remained neutral, but Ethan noticed her fingers tighten almost imperceptibly around her pen. "Victor," she acknowledged, "I'm surprised you are not still answering questions from the fire marshal." A razor-thin smile crossed Victor's face. "I've always been efficient at handling emergencies. Unlike our current security protocols, apparently." His gaze shifted to Ethan, assessing. "Though it seems you've taken steps to address that deficiency." Eleanor Pike, the board chairwoman, rapped her knuckles on the table. "Let's focus, shall we? We have a company in crisis, a building with significant damage, and investors demanding answers. Claire, what's our response?" Claire stood, commanding the room with quiet authority. "The response is simple. We continue with Project Phoenix. The fire-damaged peripheral offices, but our secure servers remain intact. The prototype testing is still on schedule." "Project Phoenix is precisely what we need to discuss," Victor interjected, opening his portfolio. "The development costs have exceeded projections by 30%. The clinical trial data is promising, but not definitive. And now we have a possible security breach. Perhaps it's time to consider alternative approaches." "You mean your approach," Claire said, "the merger with MedTech Global." "It would solve our immediate financial concerns," Harrington added, "and provide additional security resources." Ethan watched the dynamic unfold, recognizing the choreographed nature of the exchange. Victor and Harrington had prepared this assault, with Eleanor playing the role of objective mediator. MedTech wants our research, Claire said firmly. They don't want a partnership. They want acquisition. If we merge, Project Phoenix becomes their property, and they'll shelve it in favor of their own treatments, which are less effective but more profitable. That's speculation, Victor said smoothly. That's pattern recognition, Claire countered. They've done it with 3 previous acquisitions, buying innovation to bury it. Eleanor sighed. The fact remains, Claire, that after last night's incident, confidence in your leadership has been questioned. Perhaps a strategic pause would be prudent. A pause would kill us, Claire said, her voice lower but more intense. Project Phoenix isn't just another product. It's a breakthrough in respiratory disease treatment. Thousands of patients are waiting for this technology, including children with severe asthma who have no other options. Ethan straightened at this, his mind immediately going to Sophie. Victor's smile didn't reach his eyes. Your passion is admirable, Claire, but business decisions require pragmatism, not sentiment. This isn't sentiment, she replied. It's vision, and it's why this company exists. Eleanor glanced at her watch. We'll revisit this discussion after a full assessment of the fire damage. In the meantime, Claire, I suggest you prepare a statement for our investors. Confidence is fragile, especially when buildings are not. As the board members filed out, Victor lingered, waiting until only Claire, Ethan, and Mira remained. Your new security detail is quite attentive, he observed, glancing at Ethan. Though I wonder if hiring the man who happened to rescue you creates a certain conflict of interest. The only conflict of interest I'm concerned with, Claire replied, is yours, Victor. Still pushing the MedTech merger after they declined your proposal for a board position? Something dangerous flashed in Victor's eyes. Be careful, Claire. Glass towers are fragile things. So are reputations. He nodded to Mira as he left. Ms. Chen, always a pleasure. When the door closed, Claire turned to Ethan. Tour the Security Operations Center. I want your assessment by end of day. Ethan nodded, understanding the dismissal for what it was, a chance to explore the building's vulnerabilities without raising suspicion. As he left, he heard Mira ask, Do you really trust him? Claire's answer followed him into the hallway. I trust that he has nothing to gain by betraying me. That's rarer than you'd think. The Winters Innovation Security Center occupied half of the 42nd floor, a warren of monitoring stations, server racks, and glass-walled offices. The technology was cutting edge, but Ethan immediately spotted the human weaknesses. Officers more focused on their phones than their screens, badge readers with tape over the sensors for convenience, doors propped open with waste bins. You must be the new boss, a voice called from behind a bank of monitors. A heavy-set man in his 50s emerged, extending a hand. Dave Simmons, Security Operations Manager? Ethan shook the offered hand, noting the firm grip and assessing eyes. Ethan Reed. Navy, right? Dave asked. I can spot military a mile away. Marines myself, back when dinosaurs roamed the earth. SEAL, Ethan confirmed, warming slightly to the man's straightforward manner. Dave nodded, figured it was something special ops. You've got that look, like you're counting exits and measuring threat levels without even thinking about it. He gestured around the room. So what do you think of our setup? Impressive technology, Ethan said diplomatically. The implementation has room for improvement. Dave barked a laugh. Corporate speak for this place is a mess. I've been saying it for years. Got the top-of-the-line toys, but can't get approval for proper staffing or training. He lowered his voice. Between us, there's a reason that fire got so out of control. System's been glitchy for months. My reports keep getting lost somewhere between here and the executive floor. Ethan's interest sharpened. Lost by whom? Above my pay grade to speculate, Dave said with a meaningful look. But I'll tell you this. The only person who ever followed up on my concerns was Ms. Winters. The rest of them, he made a dismissive gesture. I'd like to see those reports, Ethan said. Dave scratched his chin. Officially, they don't exist anymore. Unofficially, he tapped a drawer in his desk. I keep backups. Old habit from the Corps. Always have hard copies when the digital trail gets murky. Smart man. Paranoid man, Dave corrected. But in this business, paranoia keeps the lights on. He pulled a flash drive from his pocket. 3 months of security logs, badge access records, and my personal notes. I was planning to take this to Ms. Winters after the dust settled. Ethan accepted the drive, tucking it into his pocket. Why are you giving this to me? Dave's expression grew serious. Because you pulled her out of that fire when everyone else was running the other way. That tells me something about your character. He hesitated. And because my daughter has asthma too, I've heard rumors about Project Phoenix. If it's what they say it is, a lot of families need that to succeed. Ethan stared at him, startled. Dave shrugged. Small building, big ears. Sophie visited last month for Take Your Child to Work Day. Sweet kid. Before Ethan could respond, an alarm chimed on one of the monitors. Dave turned, scanning the screen. Breach in R&D, he reported, already moving. Biomedical section. Ethan followed, instinctively reaching for a weapon that wasn't there. Camera feed? Switching now. Dave's fingers flew across the keyboard. The main screen flickered, showing a laboratory where a figure in a lab coat was accessing a secure terminal. That's Dr. Pierce, Dave said. She's authorized for that area, but not at this hour. She badged in through the loading dock 5 minutes ago, which is weird because she always uses the executive entrance. Ethan studied the woman's movements. Hurried, furtive, checking over her shoulder as she downloaded files to a portable device. That's not normal behavior, he said. Who is she? Head of research. Been with the company forever. She's Mrs. Winters' personal physician too, I think. On screen, Dr. Pierce finished her download and hurried toward the exit, tucking the device into her lab coat. Keep tracking her, Ethan ordered. Don't approach, just monitor. And get me everything you have on Dr. Helen Pierce. The school playground hummed with activity, children's laughter rising above the steady drum of rain on metal awnings. Sophie Reed sat alone on a bench under the covered area, a book open on her lap, her small fingers tracing diagrams of the human respiratory system. Her inhaler rested beside her like a constant companion. That looks like advanced reading for 4th grade, Claire said, approaching carefully, an umbrella in hand, though she stood under the shelter. Sophie looked up, recognition dawning in her eyes. You're Claire, from the phone. That's right. Are you checking up on me for my dad? Claire smiled, settling onto the bench. Actually, I was hoping you might help me with something. Sophie's eyebrows rose, interest peaked. Me? Help you? I'm working on a special project, a medical device for people with asthma. I thought you might have some insights, being an expert and all. Sophie sat straighter, pride evident in her posture. I'm not really an expert, just experienced. Experience is its own kind of expertise, Claire said. May I? She gestured to the book. Sophie nodded and Claire examined the page. Detailed illustrations of bronchial passages, annotations in a child's careful handwriting in the margins. Your notes are very precise, Claire observed. Are you interested in medicine? Science, Sophie corrected. I want to understand how things work so I can fix them when they break. She hesitated. Like my lungs. Claire felt an unexpected tightness in her chest. That's exactly what my project aims to do. It's called Phoenix. Like the bird that comes back from ashes? Sophie's eyes brightened. That's a good name. I thought so too. Claire reached into her bag, withdrawing a slim tablet. Would you like to see something not many people have seen yet? Sophie nodded eagerly. Claire activated the tablet, bringing up a 3D model of microscopic particles. These are specially designed nanobots, tiny robots smaller than a human cell. They can travel into the lungs and help repair damaged tissue or deliver medicine exactly where it's needed. Sophie's mouth formed a perfect O of wonder. That's like science fiction. The best science starts as fiction, Claire said, until someone makes it real. And this would help people like me? That's the plan. No more emergency room visits in the middle of the night. No more sitting out during recess. Claire gestured to the playground where other children played. Freedom to run without fear. Sophie studied the images, her young face suddenly serious. Is that why someone tried to hurt you? Because of this? Claire stilled, surprised by the child's perception. What makes you think someone tried to hurt me? Dad always says fires don't just happen in buildings with sprinklers everywhere, and he only gets that look in his eyes when something's really wrong. Sophie closed her book. Plus you're hiding. Famous people don't usually come to school playgrounds unless they're hiding. A laugh escaped Claire. You are definitely your father's daughter. Is he helping you stay safe? Yes, Claire said softly. He is. Sophie nodded, satisfied. Good. He's really good at that part. She paused, considering. Are you going to the hearing tomorrow? The custody hearing? I don't know if that would be appropriate. My aunt doesn't think Dad can take care of me properly, Sophie said, her voice smaller. She says his job isn't important enough, and we don't have enough money for my treatments. She looked up at Claire, vulnerability naked in her expression. But he reads to me every night, even when he's tired, and he never ever misses my doctor appointments, even when his boss gets mad. That's important, isn't it? Claire felt something crack inside her chest, a thin fissure in the protective wall she'd built around her emotions. Yes, she said, her voice rough with unexpected feeling. That's the most important thing of all. Sophie nodded, then surprised Claire by leaning against her side, still studying the tablet. I hope your tiny robots work. I'd like to see what it feels like to run without stopping. Claire hesitated only a moment before putting her arm around the child's thin shoulders. So would I, Sophie. So would I. Ethan found Claire waiting in his truck outside the school, her expression thoughtful as she watched the children filing out at the end of the day. Making friends? He asked, sliding into the driver's seat. Your daughter is remarkable, Claire said. Perceptive, resilient. She has to be. He started the engine. Everything okay at headquarters? Claire gazed out the window. If by okay you mean balancing on the knife edge of corporate coup, then yes, perfectly fine. That bad? Victor's making his move. He's lined up Harrington and at least 3 other board members. They want to pause Project Phoenix and explore the MedTech merger. She turned to him. Did you find anything in security? Several things, Ethan said, pulling into traffic. Dave Simmons gave me 3 months of security logs. There's a pattern of access anomalies. Someone using executive credentials during off hours, primarily to the R&D floors. Victor? Not directly. The credentials belong to Dr. Helen Pierce. Claire's brow furrowed. Helen? That's not possible. She's the heart of Phoenix. She's been with me since the beginning. She was in the lab an hour ago, downloading files to an external device. Behavior consistent with data theft. There must be an explanation, Claire insisted. Helen wouldn't betray me. She's not just a colleague, she's a friend. Ethan kept his eyes on the road. In my experience, proximity doesn't guarantee loyalty. And in my experience, judgment without context is dangerous, Claire countered. Helen lost her husband to pulmonary fibrosis 5 years ago. Phoenix began as her personal mission. There's no logical reason for her to sabotage it now. Unless she was forced, Ethan suggested. Pressure, threats, blackmail. There are many ways to turn an ally. Claire was silent for a moment. Where are we going? This isn't the way to your apartment. No, Ethan agreed. We're making a detour. I think it's time you saw something. 20 minutes later, they pulled up before a modest building in the industrial district. A weathered sign read, Rainier Heights Community Center. Inside, the gymnasium echoed with the sounds of children playing basketball under the watchful eyes of volunteer coaches. Ethan led Claire to a small office off the main hallway where a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and steel gray hair sat reviewing paperwork. Ethan Reed, she said warmly, rising to greet them. Twice in 1 week. I'm honored. Dr. Abernathy, Ethan replied with genuine respect. This is Claire Winters. Claire, meet Dr. Sarah Abernathy, pediatric pulmonologist and the closest thing to a guardian angel this neighborhood has. Dr. Abernathy waved away the praise. Hardly an angel, just a doctor who believes healthcare shouldn't depend on zip codes. She assessed Claire with interest. Winters Innovations. Your company's work in biomedical engineering is impressive. Thank you, Claire said. Though I'm curious why Ethan has brought me here. Tuesday Clinic, Ethan explained. Dr. Abernathy runs a weekly program for kids with respiratory conditions from low-income families. Sophie started coming here after Maya died and our insurance changed. Dr. Abernathy gestured for them to follow her down a hallway. We do what we can with limited resources. Inhalers, nebulizer treatments, education for families. But the truth is, these children need more than we can provide. She led them into a large room where about 20 children of various ages were engaged in breathing exercises under the guidance of a respiratory therapist. Several had the same fragile quality as Sophie, the careful way they monitored their own breathing, the measured pace of their movements. These are the ones who fall through the cracks, Dr. Abernathy said quietly. Too sick for regular school activities, not sick enough for intensive intervention programs. Their families can't afford the cutting-edge treatments, and insurance companies deny coverage for experimental options. Claire watched a young boy, no more than 7, demonstrate to a smaller child how to use an inhaler correctly. His patience and gentle encouragement spoke of too much experience for someone so young. Project Phoenix, she murmured. Abernathy's eyes sharpened. I've heard rumors. Targeted nanotherapy for respiratory conditions. Is it real? Yes, Claire said, and it's why someone tried to burn down my building. Dr. Abernathy didn't look surprised. Medical breakthroughs threaten existing power structures, especially those that might render expensive long-term treatments obsolete. I brought you here, Ethan said to Claire, because I wanted you to see what's at stake. This isn't just about corporate politics or personal vendettas. These kids need Phoenix to succeed. Claire met his gaze, understanding dawning. This is why you agreed to help me, not just for Sophie, but for all of them. One parent to another, he said simply. Something shifted between them in that moment, a deepening of trust, a recognition of shared purpose beyond their immediate circumstances. Dr. Abernathy watched this exchange with perceptive eyes. Whatever you're up against, she said to Claire, remember that innovation without compassion is just technology, but innovation with purpose can change worlds. The evening settled over Seattle in shades of indigo and amber, the city lights reflecting off low-hanging clouds. In Ethan's apartment, Claire sat cross-legged on the couch, surrounded by printouts from the security logs, her hair pulled back in a loose ponytail, glasses perched on her nose. A far cry from the polished executive who had commanded the boardroom that morning. These access patterns make no sense, she muttered. Helen's badge was used in 3 different locations within minutes of each other last Thursday. That's physically impossible. Ethan emerged from the kitchen with 2 mugs of coffee. Badge cloning, common tactic. The question is, who has access to duplicate employee credentials? That would require administrator privileges for the security system. Claire accepted the coffee gratefully, which narrows it down to IT directors, security chiefs, and executive leadership. And maintenance personnel with the right clearance, Ethan added. Specifically, those with access to the server rooms where the security systems are housed. Claire looked up sharply. You think someone on your team is involved? I think we need to consider all possibilities. Ethan settled into the armchair across from her. Tell me about the origins of Project Phoenix. Start from the beginning. Claire removed her glasses, rubbing the bridge of her nose. It began 5 years ago. Helen's husband, Richard, was in the final stages of pulmonary fibrosis. Traditional treatments had failed, and he was too weak for a transplant. Helen was desperate, experimenting with nanoscale drug delivery systems in our labs after hours. Unauthorized research? Initially, yes. When I discovered what she was doing, I should have shut it down. Corporate protocol demanded it. Claire's gaze grew distant. But I saw something in her work, potential beyond the immediate application. So instead of reporting her, I gave her resources, a team, official sanction. Why, Ethan pressed? What made you break protocol? Claire was quiet for a moment. When I was 12, my father developed a prototype for a specialized ventilation system in woodworking shops. Sawdust is a major respiratory hazard, especially fine particles from exotic woods. His system would have revolutionized worker safety. Would have? He tried to partner with a major tool manufacturer. They strung him along for months, examining his designs, promising investment. Then they suddenly backed out, only to release their own version a year later. Patent laws were different then, and my father couldn't afford the legal battle. The stress exacerbated his existing heart condition. Her voice tightened. He died believing his life's work had been stolen. Ethan absorbed this, connecting pieces. And Winters and Sons? The woodworking shop that burned down? My father's legacy. My brothers wanted to sell after his death. I refused. I was going to modernize it, implement his safety systems properly. Claire's laugh held no humor. The fire happened 3 days before the renovations were scheduled to begin. You think it was deliberate? I know it was, she said with quiet certainty. But I couldn't prove it, and insurance investigators ruled it accidental. The payout barely covered our debts. So Phoenix isn't just a product to you, Ethan observed. It's redemption. Claire met his gaze. It's justice. For Helen's husband, for my father, for every person who's had their breath stolen by forces beyond their control. She gestured to the papers surrounding them, and now someone wants to steal it, just like they stole my father's work. A comfortable silence settled between them, filled with the gentle patter of rain against the windows and the distant hum of the city. What happened to your wife? Claire asked eventually, her voice soft in the dim light. Ethan's hands tightened around his mug. Car accident. Rainy night, much like this one. Drunk driver crossed the median. They said she died instantly. You don't believe that? I believe they tell that to everyone, he said. It's kinder than the alternatives. You were deployed? He nodded. Afghanistan, special reconnaissance mission. They pulled me out, but by the time I made it back, the funeral was over. Sophie had been staying with Maya's sister Jennifer. She wanted to keep her. His jaw tightened. Still does. Because a military father wasn't stable enough, Claire guessed. And now a maintenance man isn't successful enough. Ethan set his mug down. I left the service to give Sophie stability. Took a job with regular hours, no deployments, no danger. Traded one uniform for another. You miss it, Claire observed. The purpose, the clarity of mission. Sometimes, he admitted, but Sophie needs me more than the world needs another operator. Claire studied him thoughtfully. What would you say if I told you I could help with your custody case? Ethan's expression hardened. I'd say I don't need charity. Not charity. So need I ready, Claire clarified. Strategic alliance. You're helping me protect Phoenix. I'm helping you protect your family. Equivalent exchange. And how exactly would you help? The same way I solve most problems in this city, with connections and resources. Jennifer's argument centers on financial stability and access to medical care, correct? What if those concerns were addressed? Ethan's eyes narrowed. What are you suggesting? A position at Winters Innovations. Legitimate, with salary and benefits commensurate with your qualifications. Head of security isn't just a cover story. We genuinely need someone with your skills. The medical benefits package includes comprehensive coverage for chronic conditions, including experimental treatments. Like Phoenix. Eventually, yes. Claire leaned forward. This isn't a handout, Ethan. It's an investment in someone I trust, which, as you've pointed out, is a rare commodity in my world. Before Ethan could respond, his phone buzzed with an incoming text. He checked the screen, frowning. Dave, he explained, there's been another security breach. Someone accessed the Phoenix servers 20 minutes ago using Helen's credentials. But according to HR logs, Helen left the building 2 hours ago. Claire was already on her feet. We need to talk to her. Agreed. Ethan grabbed his jacket, but not alone and not without backup. Helen Pierce's townhouse sat on a quiet street in Queen Anne, its windows dark save for a single light in what appeared to be a home office. Ethan parked a block away, scanning the area with practiced eyes. Something's not right, he murmured. No movement inside, no shadows passing the windows. Maybe she's working at her desk, Claire suggested. Maybe. Ethan didn't sound convinced. Stay here, I'll check the perimeter. This is my friend, my colleague, Claire protested. I'm coming with you. Ethan recognized the determination in her voice. Fine, but stay behind me, and if I say run, you run. No questions. They approached the house cautiously, rain muffling their footsteps on the well-maintained path. The front door stood slightly ajar, a thin slice of light spilling onto the porch. Ethan tensed, motioning for Claire to stay back. He pushed the door open with careful pressure, listening for any sound from within. Helen? Claire called softly. It's Claire. Are you home? Silence answered her. The foyer opened into a tastefully decorated living room, undisturbed except for a half-empty glass of wine on the coffee table. Ethan moved through the space with the quiet efficiency of a man accustomed to hostile environments, checking sight lines and potential threats. Office is upstairs, Claire whispered, pointing to the light visible from the second floor. They ascended the stairs slowly, the wooden steps creaking despite their caution. The door to the office stood open, revealing a desk with a computer still running, papers scattered across the surface. Helen? Claire called again, stepping into the room. Ethan's hand shot out, pulling her back just as she was about to round the desk. Wait. Too late. Claire saw what lay beyond. Helen Pierce sprawled on the floor, blood pooling beneath her head, eyes open and unseeing. No, Claire breathed, a single syllable laden with horror and denial. Ethan knelt beside the body, checking for a pulse he knew wouldn't be there. Recent, he assessed clinically. Within the hour, he pointed to the woman's temple. Single gunshot, close range. Claire stared, shock rendering her momentarily speechless. Then her training took over. The crisis management instincts honed through years of corporate leadership. We need to call the police, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. Not yet. Ethan was examining the room with focused intensity. This was staged to look like suicide, but the angle is wrong and there's no weapon. He pointed to the computer, and someone wanted us to find this. The screen displayed a series of emails between Helen and Victor Lang, dating back 6 months. The most recent, sent that afternoon, contained a single line. The board meets tomorrow. Final offer. Choose wisely. She was working with him, Claire said, the betrayal cutting deep. All this time. Maybe, Ethan said, still searching the room. Or maybe she was being coerced. He opened a drawer in the desk, revealing a stack of medical bills marked overdue in angry red stamps. Cancer treatment, aggressive regimen, insurance denied coverage. She never told me, Claire said, the pieces falling into place with sickening clarity. Victor offered to pay for her treatment in exchange for Phoenix data. And when she became a liability, Ethan didn't need to finish the thought. We need to go, Claire said suddenly. Now. Wait a hey. Because this isn't just about corporate espionage anymore. It's murder. And we're standing in the middle of the crime scene with no alibi in every motive. She gestured to the computer. This is a setup. We're meant to be found here. As if in confirmation, headlights swept across the front of the house, followed by the distinctive sound of car doors closing. Back door, Ethan decided, already moving. Through the yard, over the fence. Don't run until we hit the next street. They slipped out just as voices entered the front door, measured official tones calling out police identification. In the darkness of Helen's backyard, Claire caught a glimpse of a familiar sedan parked across the street, the same black SUV that had appeared outside Winter's Tower the night of the fire. Victor, she whispered as they scaled the fence. He's watching. Ethan's expression hardened. Let him watch. It'll be the last move he makes. Morning arrived with the harsh glare of reality. Ethan's small television displayed a news anchor reporting outside Helen Pierce's home, the headline scrolling beneath. Winter's Innovations Research Director found dead. Police seek CEO for questioning. Sources close to the investigation suggest Dr. Pierce may have discovered irregularities in the company's flagship medical project. Winter's Innovations CEO Claire Winters, who was reportedly the last person to see Dr. Pierce alive, has not been available for comment. Claire sat at the kitchen table, her face pale but composed as she listened to her own crucifixion in the court of public opinion. They're painting me as a desperate executive eliminating a whistleblower, she said, her voice flat. The perfect narrative. It's too perfect, Ethan replied, switching off the television. Detective Chen will see through it. If they give her the case, Claire rubbed her temples. Victor has connections in the department. That's why he let us escape last night. He doesn't want me arrested yet. He wants me ruined first. The custody hearing is in 3 hours, Ethan said, checking his watch. We can't miss it. Claire looked at him incredulously. Ethan, I'm being implicated in a murder. Your custody case should be the least of our concerns right now. It's not just about custody anymore, he said firmly. It's about establishing public record. If we appear in court as scheduled, documented, and witnessed, It undermines the narrative that we're fleeing justice. Understanding dawned in Claire's eyes. A legal alibi. Exactly, and he hesitated. Sophie needs me there. I promised her. Claire's expression softened. Of course, we'll go. She stood, straightening her borrowed clothes with dignity that transcended their humble origins. But first, we need to retrieve something from my apartment. Claire's penthouse occupied the top floor of an exclusive building overlooking Elliott Bay. The space was immaculate, minimalist, with floor-to-ceiling window that turned Seattle's cityscape into living art. It felt sterile to Ethan, beautiful but unlived in, more showcase than sanctuary. Claire moved efficiently through the swam, gathering essentials with the practiced ease of someone accustomed to packing for sudden business trips. In her bedroom, she knelt before a hidden safe, entering a complex code. Victor doesn't know about this, she explained, removing a slim external hard drive. Backup of all Phoenix research, plus financial records documenting the coercion of at least 2 other scientists on our team. Helen wasn't the first person Victor approached. You knew? Ethan asked, surprised. I suspected, Claire corrected, but I couldn't prove it without revealing I was investigating board members, which would have triggered the very coup we're experiencing now. She slipped the drive into her pocket. There's something else you should see. She led him to a home office where framed photographs lined the walls, Claire with various dignitaries and business leaders, award ceremonies, charity galas. She pointed to one image half hidden behind others, a much younger Claire, standing beside her father outside a woodworking shop, both covered in sawdust and smiling. Winters and Sons, she said softly, the day we installed his first prototype ventilation system. But Ethan's attention had caught on another photograph, a group of first responders outside the burned remains of what was clearly the same building. The fire, he said, recognition dawning. I was there. Claire nodded. I know. I recognized your name when I reviewed your employment file, but I wasn't certain until I saw how you handled the evacuation at Lexington Tower. The same methodical approach, the same focus on minimizing casualties over saving property. You knew who I was when you came to my apartment that first morning. Yes, she admitted. And no, I knew you had been part of the rescue team at my father's shop. I didn't know you had a daughter, or that you were fighting for custody, or that you... She trailed off. That I what? Ethan pressed. That you would be someone I could trust, she finished quietly. That part was unexpected. The moment stretched between them, charged with unspoken recognition. Then Claire's phone buzzed, breaking the spell. Detective Chen, she reported, checking the screen. She wants to meet before the hearing, says she has information about Helen's death. Could be a trap, Ethan warned, or it could be our only chance to get ahead of this. Claire tucked the phone away. We have to risk it. The county courthouse loomed like a stone sentinel in the morning light, its steps already crowded with reporters drawn by the double attraction of a high-profile custody case and a murder investigation. Ethan and Claire slipped in through a service entrance, guided by Detective Chen's terse instructions. They found her waiting in a small conference room, her expression grave as she slid a folder across the table. Helen Pierce was murdered by a professional, she said without preamble. Ballistics matched 3 other suicides in the past year, all connected to medical research firms. The killer leaves no prints, no doe-in, just a very distinctive bullet trajectory. Victor hired a hitman, Claire said, unsurprised. Not directly, Chen corrected. Victor Lang hasn't made a call or sent an email that could connect him to any of this. He's too careful. But you don't believe we did it, Ethan observed. Chen's mouth quirked. Let's just say I find it unlikely that a CEO with no criminal record and a former Navy SEAL would commit murder so sloppily. Besides, building security footage shows both of you entering Ethan's apartment at 7:42 p.m. and not leaving until 10:15 p.m. Helen was killed around 9:30. Relief washed over Claire. So we're cleared? Officially, you're persons of interest, not suspects. But that could change. Chen leaned forward. The evidence at Helen's house was too convenient. Someone wants you to take the fall for this, and they have resources to make it happen. Why are you helping us? Ethan asked bluntly. Chen studied them both for a moment. Because my nephew has cystic fibrosis. Because Project Phoenix could change his life. And because I've spent my career watching powerful men get away with murder, both literal and figurative. She stood. Your hearing starts in 30 minutes, courtroom 3B. I've arranged for security to escort you through a side entrance to avoid the press. As she turned to leave, Claire called after her, what about the data vault? We still need those unaltered security logs. Tonight, Chen decided, after hours, when the building is emptier. I'll meet you there. She paused at the door. And Claire, watch Mira Chen. There's something off about her access patterns in those logs. Same last name as mine, no relation. Courtroom 3B hummed with tension as Ethan sat at the petitioner's table, tie knotted too tight, hands folded before him. Across the aisle, Jennifer Marshall whispered urgently to her attorney, a silver-haired man with a voice like sandpaper. Sophie sat in the front row of the gallery, small legs swinging, her eyes darting anxiously between her father and her aunt. Claire slipped into the seat directly behind Ethan, close enough that her words could reach him without carrying. You don't have to win by looking like you belong here, she murmured. You just have to look like you belong with her. His shoulders eased a fraction. That I can do. The judge entered, a stern woman with intelligent eyes and a reputation for child-centered decisions. After the formalities, Jennifer's attorney rose first. Your Honor, while we respect Mr. Reed's dedication to his daughter, Sophie's aunt offers a more advantageous environment, a larger home, higher income, proximity to excellent medical care. Given Sophie's chronic condition, these factors should be given significant weight. Ethan's attorney, a wiry woman with steel in her gaze, countered with practiced efficiency. Mr. Reed has provided a stable home, consistent care, and maintained Sophie's medical regimen flawlessly despite financial constraints. His work record shows reliability, and his commitment to Sophie's well-being is documented by her doctors. The judge looked at Ethan. Mr. Reed, do you wish to speak? He stood, voice steady but low. Your Honor, Sophie doesn't need the biggest house or the most expensive schools. She needs to know that when she calls out in the night, someone's going to answer. She needs someone who knows she prefers strawberry jam, but will eat grape if it makes the morning faster. He hesitated, and for a moment the whole room leaned in. She needs the same thing we all do, to be wanted, not managed. Jennifer's attorney pounced. Mr. Reed's hours are unconventional. He works nights. Who cares for Sophie then? I do, Claire said, rising from her seat before Ethan could answer. Every head turned. The judge blinked. And you are? Claire Winters, she said evenly. I've stayed in Mr. Reed's home. I've seen how he runs it. I've seen him leave work early to be at Sophie's school play, and I've seen him turn down overtime because she had a fever. The silver-haired attorney recovered quickly. Ms. Winters, are you a relative? No, she said. Just someone who believes in giving testimony when you've actually witnessed the truth. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Jennifer's face tightened with barely suppressed outrage, while Sophie watched Claire with wondering eyes. The judge allowed the testimony with clear reluctance, then ordered a brief recess before continuing. In the hallway outside, the Ethan pulled Claire aside. You didn't have to do that. Yes, she replied simply. I did. Some people earn their silence. You haven't. A flicker of a smile crossed his face. You might have just put yourself on the hook for telling a court how many times I burn toast. I'll tell them it's part of your charm, she said dryly. The moment was interrupted by Jennifer Marshall approaching, her expression a storm of indignation. How dare you, she hissed at Claire, using your money and influence to interfere in a family matter. I'm not interfering, Claire replied calmly. I'm testifying to what I've observed. You've known him for what, a week? I've known Sophie her entire life. I was there when she was born. Where were you? This isn't about me, Claire said. It's about what's best for Sophie. And you think that's him? Jennifer gestured dismissively at Ethan. A janitor who can barely afford her medications, who lives in a basement apartment with secondhand furniture? Something dangerous flashed in Claire's eyes. I think it's the father who sees her for who she is, not what she lacks, who teaches her that worth isn't measured by square footage or bank accounts. How noble, Jennifer sneered. Easy to romanticize poverty when you have never experienced it. You'd be surprised what I've experienced, Claire said quietly. Before Jennifer could respond, her attorney appeared, gesturing urgently. Court's resuming, and you have a call. Says it's urgent. Something about financial backing for your case. Jennifer hesitated, then followed her attorney, casting one last venomous glance at Ethan and Claire. That was interesting timing, Ethan observed. Claire's expression revealed nothing. Yes, wasn't it? When court reconvened, a subtle shift had occurred. Jennifer appeared distracted, conferring anxiously with her attorney. The judge reviewed the submitted evidence, then delivered her ruling with measured authority. While both parties clearly care for Sophie's well-being, stability and emotional bonds must take precedence over material advantages. Pending a home evaluation, primary custody will remain with Mr. Reed, with liberal visitation rights for Ms. Marshall. Relief washed over Ethan's face as Sophie darted forward to embrace him. Over her head, his eyes met Claire's, conveying wordless gratitude. Outside the courthouse, as they descended the steps, Ethan's phone rang, a number he didn't recognize. "This is Reed," he answered. "Mr. Reed, this is Dana with Child Protective Services," a professional female voice informed him. "We'll be conducting your home evaluation tonight at 7. Ethan frowned. "That's fast." "Court orders sometimes are," Dana replied smoothly. "See you then." As he ended the call, Claire studied his expression. "That's not standard procedure, is it?" "No," he said slowly. "It's usually scheduled days in advance." Her gaze sharpened. "Victor?" Ethan didn't answer, but the truth settled between them like a lit fuse. The battle for Sophie had become another front in the war, a vulnerability to exploit, a pressure point to squeeze. "We need those security logs," Claire said, "tonight. And we need to be home by 7, Ethan added, watching Sophie chat animatedly with Dr. Abernathy, who had come to support them. "I won't give them any ammunition." Claire's phone chimed with a news alert. Her face paled as she read the headline. "Winter's Innovation Stock Plummets, Board Calls Emergency Meeting." "Victor's making his move," she said. "He's using Helen's death in my absence to force a leadership vote." "What time?" 6 o'clock. Claire's jaw set with determination. "Looks like we have a busy evening ahead." Winter's Tower stood outlined against the darkening sky, its upper floors illuminated like a corporate lighthouse. The emergency board meeting would be starting now, Claire knew, Victor positioning himself as the steady hand in turbulent waters, offering the MedTech merger as salvation. Without her present to defend Project Phoenix, the vote was a foregone conclusion. But Claire wasn't in the boardroom. She was in the basement parking garage with Ethan and Detective Chen, reviewing the plan to access the data vault. "Security is minimally staffed," Chen reported, checking her tablet. "Most personnel are monitoring the executive floor for the board meeting. We have a 20-minute window while they change shifts." "And the vault itself?" Ethan asked. "Two-factor authentication required, biometric plus access code. Claire's credentials should work, assuming they haven't been revoked." "If they have," Claire said, "we'll need to be creative." She checked her watch. "It's nearly 6. Victor will be starting his presentation now." "And we need to be home by 7 for the CPS visit," Ethan reminded her. "This has to be quick and clean." They moved through service corridors, avoiding the main areas where they might be recognized. The data vault occupied a secure section of the 27th floor, a reinforced room housing the company's most sensitive information, including backup security logs. As they approached the final corridor, Chen raised a hand in warning. "Guard station ahead, not on the rotation schedule." Through the glass partition, they could see a security officer seated at a monitoring station, eyes fixed on screens displaying the executive floor. "We need a distraction," Ethan murmured. Chen nodded. "I can trigger a minor security alert on the opposite side of the building. Should draw him away for a few minutes." "Do it," Claire decided. Chen tapped commands into her phone. Moments later, alarms chimed softly in the distance. The guard hesitated, then rose and hurried toward the sound. "Now," Ethan urged, already moving. They reached the vault entrance, a heavily reinforced door with a biometric scanner and keypad. Claire pressed her palm to the reader, holding her breath as it scanned. Green light. Accepted. She entered her access code, and the door unlocked with a pneumatic hiss. Inside, server racks hummed with the lifeblood of Winter's innovations: patents, research data, financial records, and security archives. Claire moved directly to a terminal near the back wall, inserting a specialized drive Detective Chen had provided. The unaltered logs should be in a hidden partition, Chen explained. This program will find and extract them without triggering alerts. Claire's fingers flew across the keyboard, navigating through layers of security with practiced ease. I'm in. Downloading now. Ethan kept watch at the door, tension evident in every line of his body. Hurry, guards coming back. 30 seconds, Claire murmured, eyes fixed on the progress bar. We don't have 30 seconds, Ethan warned as footsteps approached. Claire yanked the drive free the moment the download completed. Got it. Too late. The guard appeared in the corridor, his expression shifting from surprise to suspicion as he spotted them through the glass wall of the vault. Hey, stop right there! He reached for his radio. Detective Chen stepped forward, badge raised. Seattle PD, official investigation. The guard hesitated, confusion evident. I wasn't notified of any police activity. That's the point of an investigation, Chen replied coolly. Now please step aside. Before the guard could respond, the building's main alarm system activated, not the localized alert Chen had triggered, but a full-scale emergency notification. Red lights pulsed along the corridors as an automated voice advised all personnel to proceed to designated evacuation points. That's not me, Chen said, alarmed. Something's happening. Ethan's phone buzzed with an incoming call. Dave Simmons from security. Reed, he answered tersely. What's going on? Dave's voice came through, breathless and urgent. Fire alarm on executive level. Real smoke reported. And there's more. Someone just accessed R&D using your credentials. They're downloading the entire Phoenix database. That's impossible, Ethan said. I'm nowhere near R&D. System says otherwise. Look, whatever's happening, it's coordinated. Too many coincidences. Claire's eyes widened with sudden understanding. It's Victor. He's creating chaos to cover digital tracks. The board meeting, the fire alarm, the data theft. It's all happening at once. We need to get to R&D, Ethan decided. Now! They rushed toward the elevators, only to find them locked down for the emergency. Stairs, Chen directed, already moving toward the exit sign. 27 floors down was not an option. Instead, they ascended to the 30th floor, where R&D occupied the entire level. By the time they burst through the stairwell door, alarms were blaring throughout the building, and the sprinkler system had activated in certain sections, creating an eerie, mist-filled landscape of research laboratories. The main lab where Project Phoenix was housed remained sealed, environmental controls protecting the sensitive equipment from water damage. Through the glass walls, they could see a figure in a lab coat working at a central terminal. Mira, Claire breathed, recognizing her assistant. Detective Chen drew her weapon. Stay behind me. They entered the lab through the airlock system, the change in pressure announcing their arrival. Mira Chen looked up, momentarily startled, then remarkably composed for someone caught in the act. Claire, she acknowledged, you're earlier than expected. Step away from the terminal, Detective Chen ordered, gun trained on the younger woman. Mira smiled thinly. Detective Chen, I wondered if you'd figure it out. She made no move to obey. Do you know what this is? She gestured to the screen where data streamed rapidly. The culmination of 5 years' work. Nanotechnology that could revolutionize respiratory medicine forever. Her voice hardened. Too important to be controlled by one company. Too valuable to be patented and restricted. You're stealing it, Claire said, betrayal evident in her tone. I'm liberating it, Mira corrected. This research belongs to everyone, not just those who can afford Winter's Innovations price tag. Ethan studied her with tactical assessment. You're not working for Victor. Victor? Mira laughed. He's as bad as the rest. Another corporate vulture. No, I answer to more ethical interests. Med Research Initiative, Detective Chen guessed. The open-source medicine group that hacked 3 pharmaceutical companies last year. People are dying because they can't afford treatment, Mira said fiercely. Children with asthma, adults with COPD, elderly patients with pulmonary fibrosis, all because corporations value profits over lives. Phoenix will be accessible, Claire insisted. We have a tiered pricing model, subsidies for low-income patients. Crumbs from the table, Mira cut her off. Not good enough. So you killed Helen Pierce? Detective Chen demanded. For the greater good? Something flickered across Mira's face. Genuine shock. Helen, I didn't... She stopped, realization dawning. Victor. It must have been Victor. He knew she was helping me. Helping you? Claire echoed. Helen believed in open access too, Mira explained. She provided early research data. Not everything, but enough to start. She wanted Phoenix available to everyone, regardless of income. She looked at Claire with something like pity. She didn't trust you to do the right thing in the end. Before Claire could respond, a new alarm sounded, different from the fire alert, more urgent. Lockdown. Security breach protocol, Ethan explained, recognizing the pattern. The building sealing itself. Mira's expression changed to alarm. That's not possible unless... She turned back to the terminal, fingers flying across the keyboard. Someone's corrupting the Phoenix data, inserting false research parameters. Her eyes widened. If these modifications reach production, the nanobots would malfunction catastrophically. They'd cause respiratory failure instead of preventing it. Victor, Claire breathed. He's not trying to steal Phoenix. He's trying to destroy it. Or control it, Ethan suggested grimly. If he owns the only viable vision while corrupted data is released to the public, he creates a medical disaster that only he can solve, Claire finished, with MedTech's alternative treatment. The implications settled over the room like a physical weight. Thousands of patients dead, a revolutionary treatment discredited, and Victor emerging as the savior with an alternative that would make billions. Mira worked frantically at the terminal. I can't stop the corruption from here. It's coming from a primary admin account. The boardroom, Claire realized. Victor's presentation wasn't just about the merger. It was covered to access the executive terminal. We need to get up there now. Detective Chen's phone buzzed. Chen? She answered sharply. What? When? Her expression darkened as she listened. Keep the scene secure. I'm on my way. She ended the call, turning to Ethan and Claire. Victor Lang was just found dead in the boardroom, single gunshot to the head. The world seemed to tilt beneath Claire's feet. That's not possible. There's more, Chen continued grimly. The gun found at the scene is registered to Ethan Reed. Ethan stiffened. I don't own a gun. Someone wants you to take the fall, Mira said, understanding dawning. Both of you, first Helen, now Victor. But who gains from that? Claire asked, struggling to make sense of the rapidly deteriorating situation. Ethan checked his watch, a new urgency in his movements. It's 6:45, Sophie, the CPS evaluation. Claire grasped the implication immediately. If you're implicated in Victor's murder, custody revisits automatically. And if both targets of a frame-up are in the same place when discovered, Detective Chen didn't need to finish the thought. We need to split up, Ethan decided. I need to get home to Sophie. Claire, you and Detective Chen need to secure that data and find out who's really behind this. It's too dangerous, Claire protested. Whoever did this has planned meticulously. They want us separated. They also want us desperate and reactive, Ethan countered. We can't let them dictate the terms of engagement. A tense silence fell over the group, broken only by the continuing alarms and the soft hum of laboratory equipment. Finally, Claire nodded. Go, she said. Sophie needs you more than I do right now. Something passed between them, unspoken but profound. Ethan turned to leave, then paused. Claire, he said, his voice low with intensity. This isn't over. No, she agreed. It's just beginning. As Ethan disappeared through the laboratory doors, Claire turned back to the terminal, where Mira still worked to contain the data corruption. Now, she said with renewed determination, let's find out who's trying to destroy everything we've built. The night was young, the danger mounting, and somewhere in the shadows, a puppet master watched as their carefully orchestrated chaos unfolded, unaware that their intended victims had just changed the rules of engagement. The rain had returned to Seattle with a vengeance, sheets of water cascading from a sky as dark as gunmetal. Ethan Reed navigated the slick streets with the focused precision of a man whose world had narrowed to a single imperative: reach Sophie before the trap closed completely around them. His windshield wipers fought a losing battle against the downpour as he dialed Mrs. Torres's number again. Still no answer. The court-appointed CPS evaluation suddenly scheduled for tonight. It wasn't just suspicious timing, It was part of an elaborate chess game where Sophie had become a pawn. The Belmont Apartments loomed ahead, windows glowing like warm beacons in the storm. Ethan pulled into the lot, noting immediately the unfamiliar sedan parked in the visitor space. Sleek, black, government plates. His military instincts hummed with warning. Inside the building, the familiar scent of lemon cleaner did nothing to ease the tightness in his chest. He took the stairs two at a time, slowing only as he approached his floor, senses alert for any sign of danger. Mrs. Torres stood outside his apartment door, arms folded across her chest, her normally warm expression replaced by granite resolve as she faced a well-dressed woman with a clipboard. "I keep telling you," Mrs. Torres was saying, "Mr. Reed was called to an emergency. He'll be here any minute. Procedure requires that we begin the evaluation at the scheduled time," the woman replied, her voice professionally detached. "His absence is concerning, especially given the circumstances." "What circumstances would those be?" Ethan asked, stepping into view. Both women turned, Mrs. Torres's face flooded with relief, while the CPS worker, Dana, according to her ID badge, regarded him with cool assessment. "Mr. Reed, you're late. There was an emergency at work." He moved past her to his door, keying in the lock without taking his eyes off her. "Where's Sophie?" "Inside with my colleague. Standard procedure, separate interviews to ensure candid responses." Alarm prickled along Ethan's spine as he pushed open the door. The apartment was oddly quiet, the absence of Sophie's usual chatter conspicuous. A man in a dark suit sat at the kitchen table, making notes on a tablet. "Sophie?" Ethan called, fighting to keep his voice calm. The man looked up. "Mr. Reed, your daughter is in her room collecting some items. We've explained that she'll be staying with her aunt tonight while we complete our assessment." "That's not authorized," Ethan said, his voice dropping to a dangerous register. "The court ruling today maintained my custody." "New information has come to light," Dana said from behind him. "Potential criminal involvement. For Sophie's safety, temporary placement with a relative is standard protocol." "What new information?" But even as he asked, Ethan knew. Victor's murder, his gun at the scene. The frame was being closed with ruthless efficiency. Sophie emerged from her bedroom, backpack clutched to her chest, eyes wide with confusion and fear. "Dad, they said I have to go with Aunt Jen tonight, that you're in trouble." Ethan knelt to her level, projecting a calm he didn't feel. "There's been a mistake, Bean. Everything's going to be fine." "Mr. Reed," Dana interjected, "please don't make promises you can't keep. It only confuses the child." Sophie's lower lip trembled. "They said you hurt someone." "No," Ethan said firmly. "I didn't hurt anyone. Someone's trying to make it look like I did." He reached for his phone. "I'm calling my attorney." The male CPS worker moved with surprising speed, placing a restraining hand on Ethan's arm. "I'm afraid we can't allow that right now, Mr. Reed. If you interfere with this placement, we'll be forced to involve the police." Mrs. Torres stepped forward, indignation radiating from her small frame. "This is wrong. You know it's wrong." "It's procedure," Dana repeated, the word hollow in the tense apartment. Ethan's mind raced through options, each more desperate than the last. A standoff would traumatize Sophie. Violence was unthinkable. Running would confirm guilt. He needed time to expose the real killer, time to protect his daughter. "Let me call her aunt," he said finally. "If Sophie has to go somewhere tonight, I want to speak with Jennifer myself." Dana hesitated, then nodded. 5 minutes, supervised. As Ethan dialed, Sophie moved to his side, pressing against him with the instinctive need for reassurance. He wrapped one arm around her shoulders, holding her close while the phone rang. "Jennifer Marshall speaking." "Jennifer, it's Ethan. There are CPS workers here saying Sophie needs to stay with you tonight." A pause. "Yes, I've been notified. My attorney called an hour ago." "Did he tell you why? Did he tell you I'm being framed for murder?" Another pause, longer this time. "He said there were serious allegations, that it would be better for Sophie to be with me until things are clarified." "And you believe that? After everything today, after the judge ruled in my favor, you're just going to go along with this?" "What choice do I have, Ethan?" Jennifer's voice cracked slightly. "If I refuse and something happens to her, I'd never forgive myself. At least with me, she's with family." The last word hung between them, laden with implication. Not you, not really family, just the man who married her sister. Jennifer, Ethan lowered his voice, aware of the CPS worker's watchful presence. Please, something is very wrong here. The timing, the rush, none of this follows normal procedure. I think Sophie might be in danger. From what? I don't know yet, but I'm asking you, begging you to be careful. Don't let anyone take her from your sight, not even for a minute. Silence stretched across the line then. You really believe she's in danger? Yes. Okay. Jennifer's voice firmed with decision. I'll keep her safe, Ethan. Whatever's happening, Sophie won't pay the price. Thank you. Relief loosened the vice around his chest. Let me talk to her before she goes. Ethan knelt again before Sophie, brushing damp hair from her forehead. Hey, Bean, you're going to stay with Aunt Jen tonight. Why? Large eyes, so like her mother's, searched his face for reassurance. Because some grown-ups made a mistake, and I need a little time to fix it. But I promise, he glanced meaningfully at the CPS workers, daring them to interrupt. I promise I will come for you. Nothing in this world could stop me. Sophie nodded solemnly, then reached into her backpack, extracting her beloved copy of The Dragon with the Chocolate Heart. She pressed it into his hands. For luck, she whispered. Dragons always keep their promises. Ethan's throat tightened painfully. Always, he agreed. He stood, facing the CPS workers with cold determination. I want your names, badge numbers, and supervisor contact information. My attorney will be in touch tonight. Dana handed him a business card. Everything's in order, Mr. Reed. We're just doing our job. As they led Sophie away, she looked back once, a small hand raised in farewell. Ethan stood in the doorway, memorizing every detail of her face, the weight of the book in his hands, his only anchor to sanity. This isn't right, Mrs. Torres said beside him as the CPS workers escorted Sophie to their car. First the fire, then that poor doctor. Now this? Someone's trying to destroy you both. Not trying, Ethan corrected, watching the taillights disappear into the rain. Succeeding. He pulled out his phone, dialing Claire's number. When she answered, the background noise suggested she was still at Winter's Tower. They took Sophie, he said without preamble. Claire's sharp intake of breath carried clearly over the line. CPS? Yes, but something's off. The woman who called earlier, Dana, she knew details that weren't public yet, about Victor. Where are they taking her? Jennifer's for now. Ethan closed his apartment door, leaning against it. Claire, I think we're missing something. Victor's death doesn't make sense. He was winning. The board was moving his way. Project Phoenix was compromised. Why kill him now? Because he wasn't in control anymore, Claire said slowly. He thought he was the chess master, but he was just another piece on the board. Mira's group, could they have killed him? No, Med Research wants to distribute Phoenix freely, not destroy it. Killing Victor doesn't serve their agenda. Claire paused. What about Eleanor Pike? She stood to gain if both Victor and Annie were removed. Maybe, but this feels personal. The attack on you, framing me for murder, taking Sophie, these aren't just business moves. Whoever's behind this wants us to suffer before we fall. The realization settled between them, a dark current of understanding. We need to regroup, Claire decided. Detective Chen and I have secured the Phoenix data. Mira's helping us trace the source of the corruption. Meet us at the safe house Chen arranged. I can't, Ethan said. Not yet. If Sophie's in danger, I need to be close. Ethan, I know, he cut her off, but I can't leave her out there unprotected. Not with someone hunting us. A weighted silence, then. Okay, but stay in touch. And Ethan, be careful. She stopped herself. I know, he said again, softer this time. You too. As he ended the call, Ethan became aware of Mrs. Torres watching him with knowing eyes. That woman, she said, she's important to you. It wasn't a question. Yes, Ethan admitted. She is. Mrs. Torres nodded, satisfied. Good. You've been alone too long. She pressed a key into his palm. My cousin's boat, Lake Union Marina, slip 42. If you need somewhere, they won't look. Ethan closed his fingers around the key, gratitude warming his voice. Thank you. Just bring that little girl home, she replied. Some things matter more than rules. The safe house Detective Chen had arranged was a converted warehouse loft in the industrial district, its windows overlooking Puget Sound where container ships moved like slow ghosts through the rainy night. Claire stood before a makeshift evidence board, photographs and documents connected by red string, an analog approach to their digital problem. Victor was killed with a .40 caliber pistol, Detective Chen said, taping up the ballistics report. Clean shot, professional angle, same signature as Helen Pierce's murder. Same killer, Claire concluded, but different puppet master. Mira Chen worked at a laptop nearby, her expression intent as she traced the data corruption through the Phoenix files. The algorithm is brilliant, she admitted grudgingly. It doesn't just delete or alter data, it introduces subtle errors that would cause catastrophic failure in practical application. Patients would die, but not immediately. It would look like treatment complications, not sabotage. Can you reverse it? Claire asked. Working on it, but whoever did this knows Phoenix's architecture intimately. Mira looked up, her face troubled. Claire, this isn't just someone who stole research. This is someone who understands the project from the inside. Claire absorbed this, adding another piece to the puzzle. What about the security logs from the data vault? Detective Chen pulled up the files on a tablet. They confirm what we suspected. The fire at Lexington Tower was deliberate, accelerant placed in strategic locations, alarm systems delayed. But here's the interesting part. The access logs show maintenance credentials used to enter restricted areas before the fire. Ethan? No, these were from 6 months ago when Ethan was still working at Seattle Memorial Hospital. The credentials belonged to his predecessor, James Wilson. Claire frowned. I don't remember a James Wilson. You wouldn't. He was hired through the subcontractor, worked for 3 months, then disappeared after collecting his last paycheck. Background check was clean. References solid. Too solid, Claire guessed. Exactly. We pulled his employment photo. Chen passed over a grainy security badge image. Claire studied it, frustration mounting. I don't recognize him. You wouldn't, Mira interjected, looking over from her computer. That's a digital composite, AI generated, not a real person. A chill traced Claire's spine. Someone created a fake maintenance worker, gave him access to our building, then used his credentials to set the stage for the fire 6 months ago. This wasn't a hasty plan, Chen confirmed. This was long-term strategic positioning. Claire's phone chimed with an incoming email. She checked it, her expression darkening. Board vote results. I've been officially removed as CEO, pending criminal investigation into Helen and Victor's deaths. Eleanor Pike has been named interim CEO. She looked up, and she's announcing the MedTech merger tomorrow morning. Perfect timing, Chen observed dryly. Too perfect. Claire turned back to the evidence board, the pattern finally emerging from the chaos. We've been looking at this all wrong. We assumed Victor was the mastermind, that all of this was his plan to gain control of Phoenix. But what if he was just another target? What if someone else wanted both of us out of the way? Eleanor? Mira suggested. No, Claire shook her head. Eleanor's opportunistic, not methodical. This level of planning, the personal nature of the attacks, this feels like revenge. Detective Chen straightened, understanding dawning. Someone with a grudge against both you and Ethan. Someone connected to both Winters, Innovations, and Sophie, Claire continued, the pieces falling into place. Someone who knew about the custody hearing, who had access to Phoenix research, who understood building security. And who benefits from all of you being destroyed, Mira finished. Claire turned to the board again, eyes locking on a photograph she'd overlooked. A corporate event from 2 years ago, the executive team gathered around a charity check presentation. In the background, barely noticeable, a familiar face. Chen, she said slowly, I need you to run a background check on Jennifer Marshall. Ethan's sister-in-law? Why? Because I think I just found our connection. Jennifer Marshall's home in Queen Anne Hills projected tasteful affluence, colonial architecture, manicured garden, warm lights glowing behind curtained windows. Ethan watched from his truck parked down the street, rain drumming on the roof as he monitored the house for any sign of danger. His phone vibrated with an incoming call from Claire. Jennifer is connected to MedTech, Claire said without preamble. She worked in their legal department 5 years ago, specializing in intellectual property. And guess who she reported to? Richard Pierce, Helen's husband. Ethan's blood ran cold. Helen's husband worked for MedTech? Until he got sick, he was developing a patent strategy for respiratory treatments when he was diagnosed with pulmonary fibrosis. After he died, Helen joined Winters to continue his research from a different angle, or so we thought. You think Helen was a plant? Not exactly. I think she genuinely wanted to develop Phoenix to honor her husband. But Jennifer may have used that connection to gain inside information. When Sophie started showing symptoms of severe asthma, Jennifer's interest in Phoenix would have become personal. Ethan's mind raced, connecting dots. The custody battle. It wasn't just about Sophie. It was about getting control of a potential Phoenix test subject, her own niece. Exactly. And with you out of the picture, convicted of murder, she'd have full custody and access to experimental treatments through MedTech. Ethan's grip tightened on the phone. I need to get Sophie out of there, now. Ethan, wait, we don't have enough proof yet. If you storm in there, you'll just confirm their narrative that you're dangerous and unstable. I'm not leaving my daughter with someone who might use her as a test subject. I know, Claire's voice softened, but we need to be smart about this. Detective Chen is getting a warrant based on Jennifer's undisclosed conflict of interest. Give us 1 hour to do this legally. Ethan watched as a second car pulled into Jennifer's driveway, a luxury sedan he didn't recognize. A man in a business suit emerged, carrying a briefcase. Someone just arrived at Jennifer's, he reported. Corporate type, not medical. Can you get closer? See who it is? I'll try. Ethan exited his truck, using the neighboring properties for cover as he moved toward Jennifer's house. The rain provided useful concealment as he approached a side window where voices drifted through partially open blinds. The board vote is complete, the male visitor was saying. Eleanor has authorized emergency trials to begin immediately. With Victor gone, there's no one left to question the accelerated timeline. And Claire Winters, Jennifer's voice, tense with anticipation, being sought by police as we speak. The evidence against her is overwhelming. Once she's arrested, MedTech will publicly distance themselves from the merger, citing ethical concerns. Then, after a suitable interval, they'll acquire Winters' innovations at a fraction of its value, including all Phoenix research. And my brother-in-law? A tragic case of a grieving widower driven to violence. His military background makes the scenario quite believable. After his conviction, Sophie's participation in the trials will be entirely your decision, as her legal guardian. Ethan's vision narrowed to a pinpoint of rage. He forced himself to breathe, to think. Acting now would endanger Sophie. He needed to document this conversation, create evidence. He raised his phone, activating the recording function as Jennifer spoke again. I want guarantees, Nathan. Written guarantees that Sophie receives the full treatment protocol, not the placebo. I didn't orchestrate all of this just to watch her continue to suffer. Nathan. The name registered dimly in Ethan's memory. Nathan Winters, Claire's estranged brother. You'll have them, Nathan assured her. Sophie will receive the actual Phoenix therapy, the version without Helen's final modifications. It won't be as effective as the complete formula would have been, but it's better than conventional treatments. And the side effects? Manageable, according to our researchers. Nothing compared to what she endures now. Jennifer seemed to consider this. When do we move her to the facility? Tonight. The documents are prepared. As her guardian, you're authorizing her participation in an experimental treatment program for severe pediatric asthma, all perfectly legal. And if Ethan somehow manages to clear his name, Nathan's laugh held no humor. That won't happen. The evidence chain is airtight. By the time anyone realizes what's happened, the original Phoenix will be discredited, MedTech's version will be the only viable alternative, and your niece will be healthier than she's ever been. Everyone wins. Except Claire and Ethan, Jennifer noted, without apparent remorse. My sister made her choice years ago, Nathan said coldly. She chose the company over family. Now she's paying the price. Ethan had heard enough. He retreated carefully, returning to his truck to call Claire. It's Nathan, he confirmed. Your brother is working with Jennifer in MedTech. They're planning to move Sophie to a research facility tonight for experimental treatments. Claire's sharp intake of breath was the only indication of her shock. Nathan, so I should have known. After our father died, he blamed me for refusing to sell the company. Said I was choosing a legacy over living family. Well, now he's using my family as leverage. I'm going in, Claire. I can't wait. No, she said firmly. We have recording of their conversation now, evidence. Detective Chen can get an emergency custody order based on child endangerment. We're 20 minutes out. Just wait. And if they move Sophie before you arrive? A pause, then resigned. Do what you have to do. But Ethan, be careful. Nathan is dangerous. So am I, Ethan replied grimly, ending the call. He studied the house again, noting the security system, the placement of windows, the multiple exit points. The military tactician in him calculated risks and approaches, while the father in him screamed to rush in immediately. As he weighed his options, the front door opened. Jennifer emerged with Sophie, who was bundled in a raincoat despite the late hour. Behind them came Nathan, carrying Sophie's backpack. They moved toward Nathan's sedan, Jennifer guiding Sophie with a hand on her shoulder. Ethan made his decision. Slipping from the truck, he circled through neighboring yards, approaching from the blind side of the driveway as Nathan opened the car's back door. Sophie, he called, his voice carrying just enough to reach them without alerting the entire neighborhood. Sophie turned, her face lighting with relief. Dad! Jennifer spun, alarm replacing her composure. Ethan, what are you doing here? Taking my daughter home, he said simply, continuing his steady approach. Nathan stepped forward, positioning himself between Ethan and the car. That would be unwise, Mr. Reed. There's a warrant out for your arrest. You're only making things worse for yourself and for Sophie. I heard your conversation, Ethan said, directing his words to Jennifer. Experimental treatments, research facility. That's not what Sophie needs. Jennifer's expression hardened. You don't know what she needs. You've been barely keeping her alive with outdated treatments and emergency room visits. This is her chance for a real cure. A cure that might kill her, Ethan countered. You heard him. There are side effects. They don't even have the complete formula. Better than watching her struggle for every breath. Jennifer's composure cracked, revealing the desperate ant beneath. You think I want to hurt her? I'm trying to save her. Sophie looked between them, confusion and fear evident in her small face. Dad? What's happening? It's okay, Bean, Ethan assured her, still advancing slowly. Everything's going to be fine. You're coming with me now. Nathan reached into his jacket, producing a sleek pistol that he leveled at Ethan's chest. I'm afraid that's not possible, Mr. Reed. Get back in your truck and drive away. The police are already on their way. Ethan stopped, eyes fixed on the weapon. You're going to shoot me in front of my daughter? That's your plan? If necessary. Nathan's grip was steady, his expression cold. Though I'd prefer to let the justice system handle you. Much cleaner. Like you handled Helen Pierce and Victor Lang? Was that clean? A flicker of something, not quite remorse but acknowledgement, crossed Nathan's face. Necessary sacrifices for the greater good. Helen became a liability when she developed a conscience. And Victor thought he was in charge right until the end. Jennifer's eyes widened. Nathan, you said no one would get hurt. You said this was just about getting the research back where it belonged. And so it is, Nathan assured her smoothly. But business sometimes requires difficult decisions. Dad? Sophie's voice trembled. I don't feel good. Ethan glanced at his daughter, noting with alarm the labored rise and fall of her chest, the slight blue tinge to her lips. An asthma attack, triggered by stress in the cold night air. She needs her inhaler, he said urgently. It's in her backpack. Jennifer reached for the bag Nathan carried, but he stepped away. Not yet. First, Mr. Reed needs to leave. She's having an attack, Jennifer protested. Give me the inhaler. After he goes, Nathan insisted, we can handle this. Ethan calculated distances, angles, risks. Nathan stood 12 feet away, the gun unwavering. Sophie was 7 feet beyond him, her breathing growing more distressed by the second. Jennifer beside her, torn between loyalty to her plan and concern for her niece. Nathan, Ethan said calmly, I was a Navy SEAL for 12 years. specialized in hostage rescue and counterterrorism. I've disarmed men more skilled than you in worse conditions than this, but right now my daughter needs her medication. So you have a choice. Give her the inhaler or find out how fast I can cross 12 feet of wet pavement. Uncertainty flickered in Nathan's eyes, the first crack in his confident facade. He's bluffing, he told Jennifer, though his voice lacked conviction. I don't think he is, Jennifer replied, watching Sophie's increasingly labored breathing with growing panic. Nathan, give me the bag, now! In the distance, sirens wailed, police responding to the escalating situation. Nathan glanced toward the sound, his attention divided for a crucial moment. Ethan moved, years of training compressed into fluid motion as he closed the distance in 3 rapid strides. Nathan fired, a panicked shot that went wide, before Ethan's hand clamped around his wrist, twisting sharply. The gun clattered to the pavement as Ethan drove Nathan to his knees with practiced efficiency, subduing him with minimal force. Jennifer grabbed the fallen backpack, fumbling for the inhaler as Sophie's wheezing intensified. I can't find it, she cried, desperation edging her voice. Ethan secured Nathan with a restraining hold, then called to Sophie. Front pocket, Bean, remember? We always keep it in the front pocket. Sophie reached with trembling fingers, extracting the inhaler herself, a small act of self-reliance that squeezed Ethan's heart. She took 2 puffs, the medication providing immediate, if temporary, relief. The sirens grew louder, police cruisers turning onto the street with lights flashing. But before they arrived, another vehicle pulled up, Claire and Detective Chen having pushed every speed limit to reach them in time. Claire emerged first, taking in the scene with a swift glance. Nathan subdued on the ground, Jennifer hovering near Sophie, Ethan maintaining control while monitoring his daughter's breathing. Nathan, she said, approaching her brother with a complex mixture of emotions. It was you all along. Nathan looked up, defiance replacing his momentary defeat. Hello, Claire. Still cleaning up other people's messes, I see. Why? The single word carried the weight of years of estrangement, of broken family bonds. Because you stole everything, he spat. Father's company, his legacy, his love. You turned Winters and Sons into your personal monument while shutting out the actual sons. Then you had the audacity to recreate his research without acknowledging his contribution. Phoenix isn't about Father's ventilation system, Claire protested. It's an entirely different technology. Built on his foundational research, Nathan countered. Research you buried after the fire instead of sharing with the family. I found his notebooks in your office safe last year, the designs, the early concepts for microfiltration, all the components that eventually became Phoenix. Understanding dawned on Claire's face. You were the one who accessed my office during the charity gala. You stole his research notes. I reclaimed what should have been shared with me from the beginning. Nathan's voice rose with years of suppressed resentment. Then I took them to MedTech, who recognized their value immediately. They were willing to develop Father's work properly, give him the credit he deserved, until you announced Phoenix and threatened to make their investment worthless. Detective Chen approached, handcuffs ready. Nathan Winters, you're under arrest for the murders of Helen Pierce and Victor Lang and conspiracy to commit corporate espionage. As Chen secured him, Nathan fixed his gaze on Claire. You chose the wrong side, Claire. Always have. No, Claire replied quietly. I chose to honor our father by helping people, not by seeking revenge. That was his legacy, not patents or profits, but making a difference in people's lives. The police arrived, taking control of the scene as Detective Chen explained the situation. Jennifer stood apart, her expression haunted as the consequences of her actions became clear. I just wanted to help Sophie, she said when Claire approached her. Her attacks were getting worse. The doctor said she might not survive another serious episode. I understand desperation, Claire said gently, but Sophie deserves to heal without being used as a pawn. Jennifer nodded, tears streaking her face as officers led her toward a patrol car. Tell Ethan I'm sorry, she whispered. I never wanted anyone to die. I just wanted Sophie to live. Across the driveway, Ethan knelt beside Sophie, checking her breathing, his focus entirely on his daughter despite the chaos around them. You came, Sophie said, her voice small but steady, just like you promised. Always, Ethan assured her, gathering her into his arms. Nothing could have stopped me. As the police secured the scene and took statements, Claire joined them, her hand resting gently on Sophie's back. How are you feeling, sweetheart? Better, Sophie managed a weak smile. Dad says we might have to answer lots of questions tonight. That's right, Claire confirmed. But first, we need to get you somewhere warm and safe. Where will we go? Sophie asked. Aunt Jen's house has police tape now. Ethan and Claire exchanged a glance. Years of decisions and possibilities condensing into a single moment of clarity. Home, Ethan said simply. We're going home. 3 months later, cherry blossoms drifted like pink snow across the grounds of Seattle Children's Hospital, where a small crowd had gathered for the ribbon-cutting ceremony of the new Phoenix Respiratory Treatment Center. Claire stood at the podium, the spring sunlight catching the silver threads in her hair, earned during the intense weeks of testimony, restructuring, and rebuilding that had followed Nathan's arrest. Today marks not just the opening of a treatment facility, she addressed the assembled guests, but the fulfillment of a promise to patients, to families, and to the legacy of innovation that drives medical progress. Phoenix is more than a technology, it's a second chance at breath itself. In the front row, Ethan sat with Sophie beside him, her complexion healthier than it had been in years. As one of the first recipients of the fully realized Phoenix treatment, her improvement had been nothing short of miraculous. Reduced inflammation, strengthened lung tissue, and attacks so rare they had almost forgotten the fear that once dominated their lives. None of this would have been possible without the courage of those who stood against corruption and greed, Claire continued. The investigators who uncovered the truth, the scientists who refused to compromise their ethics, and the families who never stopped fighting for those they love. Her gaze met Ethan's briefly, a private acknowledgement of their shared journey. The months since Nathan's arrest had been challenging, rebuilding Winter's innovations after the attempted corporate takeover, testifying in the trials of Nathan and Jennifer, navigating the complex emotions of betrayal and forgiveness. But they had faced it together, their bond forged in crisis, now strengthened in recovery. Claire had stepped back from day-to-day operations at Winters, focusing instead on the Phoenix Foundation, a nonprofit ensuring the treatment reached those who needed it most, regardless of financial means. And Ethan had found his place as the foundation's security director, his military experience finally serving the purpose he'd always sought, protecting the vulnerable. I'd like to invite Sophie Reed to join me for the official ribbon cutting, Claire announced. As one of our first patients, Sophie represents the future we're fighting for, one where no child struggles for breath, where no parent watches helplessly as their child suffers. Sophie approached the podium with newfound confidence, her steps steady, her breathing easy. The oversized ceremonial scissors looked comically large in her small hands, but her smile as she faced the crowd was radiant. Ready? Claire asked softly. Sophie nodded, positioning the scissors. For everyone who can't breathe right, she declared, and cut the ribbon with a decisive snip. Applause erupted as balloons were released into the clear spring sky, symbolic breaths of freedom ascending into the endless blue. Later, as the crowd dispersed and the formal photographs were completed, Ethan found Claire standing alone by the hospital's memorial garden, her expression thoughtful as she watched Sophie chatting animatedly with Dr. Abernathy. Penny for your thoughts, he said, joining her. I was thinking about my father, Claire admitted, wondering what he would make of all this. Phoenix, the foundation, everything that came from his early work. I think he'd be proud, Ethan said, not of the technology or the buildings, but of what you chose to do with them. Claire smiled, the grief that had shadowed her for so long finally softening into acceptance. And Nathan, what would he think of his sister visiting him in prison every month, still trying to rebuild some kind of relationship? That he's luckier than he deserves, Ethan replied honestly. Most people don't get second chances after the damage he caused. Everyone deserves a chance at redemption, Claire said quietly, even if they never fully achieve it. That's what Phoenix is really about, isn't it? Second chances, new beginnings from the ashes of what was lost. Ethan's hand found hers, fingers intertwining with familiar ease. Speaking of new beginnings, Sophie has a question for you. Claire raised an eyebrow. Oh? She wants to know if you'll help with her science project, something about advanced respiratory mechanics. Apparently, having the inventor of Phoenix nanotherapy as a resource gives her an unfair advantage. His smile warmed his eyes. Her words, not mine. I'd be honored, Claire said, genuine pleasure lighting her features. Though she hardly needs my help, that child has a mind like a steel trap. Like someone else I know, Ethan observed. They walked together towards Sophie, who waved enthusiastically when she spotted them. There's something else, Ethan said, his voice dropping to a more intimate register. Mrs. Torres has been not so subtly suggesting that our current living arrangement might benefit from, formalization. Formalization? Claire repeated, amusement curving her lips. Is that what the military calls it these days? That's what a nervous former SEAL calls it when he's trying to find the right words to ask an intimidating CEO to marry him, Ethan admitted. Claire stopped, turning to face him fully. Is that what you're doing right now, asking? Ethan's expression grew serious. I've never been good with formal declarations or grand gestures, but I know what matters. I know that the day you walked into that burning building with me was the day my life changed course. And I know that whatever comes next, I want to face it with you. He took both her hands in his. So yes, Claire Winters, I'm asking. For a moment, Claire simply looked at him. This man who had saved her in more ways than one, who had shown her that strength came in many forms, and that the most powerful legacy wasn't built in corporate boardrooms, but in the quiet moments of commitment and care. Yes, she said simply. Yes to all of it. Sophie bounded over, her energy seemingly inexhaustible now that her lungs worked properly. Are you guys coming? Dr. Abernathy says they're serving cake in the reception hall. We wouldn't miss it, Claire assured her, tucking a strand of hair behind Sophie's ear with the natural gesture of someone who had found her place in this small family. As they walked together toward the hospital entrance, Ethan's arms settled comfortably around Claire's shoulders, Sophie skipping ahead with the exuberance of a child who no longer feared her next breath. You're coming with me, right? Sophie called back, impatient for them to catch up. Claire and Ethan exchanged a glance. Years of struggle and triumph, fear and hope, loss and love distilled into a single shared moment of perfect understanding. Always, they answered in unison, and followed their daughter into the future they had fought so hard to secure. One breath, one step, one day at a time. 1 year later, the Winters Reed family home stood bathed in golden autumn light, its restored craftsman details highlighted against the backdrop of changing leaves. What had once been Claire's father's woodworking shop had been transformed into a warm family dwelling, with the original workshop preserved as a creative space where 3 generations of innovation continued. In the backyard, tables were arranged beneath string lights for Sophie's 11th birthday celebration. Children raced across the lawn, their laughter carrying on the crisp October breeze. Sophie led the charge, her cheeks flushed with health and excitement. No inhaler in sight. On the back porch, Ethan stood with Mrs. Torres, watching the festivities with quiet satisfaction. Who would have thought, Mrs. Torres mused, that night when you brought home a CEO in a ruined suit would lead to all this? Not me, Ethan admitted. I was just trying to get through the night. And now look at you, family man, foundation director, with a home that has more than 2 rooms. Still have 2 locks on the door, though, he noted with a smile. Some habits are worth keeping, Mrs. Torres agreed sagely. Inside, Claire put final touches on Sophie's birthday cake, a confection shaped like a dragon with chocolate scales and sugar crystal breath. Her wedding ring caught the light as she worked, the simple band a constant reminder of promises made and kept. Need any help? Detective Chen, now Police Captain Chen, asked, entering the kitchen with a wrapped gift. Just about finished, Claire replied. Thanks again for coming, Mira. Sophie will be thrilled. Wouldn't miss it, Chen said, setting her gift with the others. The Phoenix Foundation's pediatric outreach program saved my nephew's life. The least I can do is show up with presents for the inspiration behind it all. Through the window, they watched as Sophie organized the other children for a game, her natural leadership emerging as she grew more confident in her health and herself. She's remarkable, Chen observed. How's she doing with the new school? Thriving, Claire said proudly. Top of her science class, of course, and the drama club has been good for her. Turns out she has a flair for storytelling. Like father, like daughter, Chen noted. Ethan's presentation at the security conference last month had everyone riveted. The back door opened as Ethan entered, carrying serving platters. Are we talking about me? Because I distinctly remember requesting no embarrassing stories at this gathering. Too late, Claire teased. I already told everyone about the pancake incident. Ethan groaned good-naturedly. I'll never live that down, will I? Not in this lifetime, Claire confirmed, rising on tiptoes to kiss his cheek. But your secret recipe for grilled salmon has redeemed your culinary reputation somewhat. Small mercies, he murmured, returning the kiss with obvious affection. Their comfortable banter was interrupted by Sophie bursting through the door, breathless with excitement rather than asthma. Dad, Claire, is it time for cake yet? Everyone's starving after the scavenger hunt. Almost ready, Claire assured her. Why don't you help Captain Chen carry out the drinks? As Sophie and Chen headed out with pitchers of lemonade, Ethan moved behind Claire Ma, arms encircling her waist as she lit the candles on the dragon cake. Happy? He asked softly, chin resting on her shoulder. Claire leaned back into his embrace, watching through the window as their assembled family of choice, Mrs. Torres, Dr. Abernathy, Dave Simmons from security, even a rehabilitated Mira who now headed the Phoenix Foundation's ethics committee, chatted and laughed in the yard they had built together. More than I ever thought possible, she answered truthfully. She turned in his arms, hands framing his face, a face that had weathered storms both literal and figurative alongside her, that had shown her what true partnership meant. You know, she said, when you pulled me out of that burning building and said you're coming with me, I had no idea how far we'd go together. Neither did I, Ethan confessed. I was just doing my job. No, Claire corrected gently. You were following your heart, the same way you've taught me to follow mine. Outside, Sophie called impatiently for the cake, her voice carrying through the open door. They gathered the celebration's centerpiece, sharing one more private moment before rejoining their guests. As they stepped into the autumn sunlight, surrounded by the family they had fought for and the home they had created from the ashes of loss, Claire felt the final pieces of her father's legacy fall into place. Not in patents or corporate achievements, but in the simple, profound act of building something that would outlast them all, a foundation of love, trust, and second chances. In the end, that was the most valuable inheritance anyone could leave behind, the courage to reach through fire and pull someone else to safety, to say with conviction and hope, "You're coming with me," and mean it forever.